to the Bomb Hole.
Bomb Hole Podcast.
It's going to be very hot. It's going to be very uncomfortable for everybody.
The Bomb Hole.
I'm gonna slide down them big hills, you know what I mean, on the big, nice burgundy snowboard.
Okay, here we go again. Another beautiful day in the booth here at the Bomb Hole, which is presented by Pub Beer and Liquid Death. Now, Stony Buds, how are we doing?
So good, my dog.
God, I love hearing that. To my left, it's a real treat of a guest today. We have Lucas Huffman in the booth. What's going on, Lucas? How we doing?
So good, my dog.
It's a real treat to have Lucas in the booth today. He is one of the most influential riders of our time, known for going bigger than everybody, and one of the first to take technical, big riding to natural features in the backcountry, you know, spinning off of wind lips, things like that. And he was in some of the biggest videos of our generation, you know, Mac Dog, Kingpin, went on to have a great career in filmmaking, and it's a real pleasure for myself to be able to sit down with you, Lucas, and let's just jump right into what you are doing these days, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, today is a good place to start.
Yeah.
After this, I'm headed up to Breckenridge. I have a short film, short narrative film that's in a film festival up there. And so that's what I do pretty much. I make films and I'm a dad. And those are kind of like the two things. And then occasionally I get to come on a trip like this.
Well, we noticed you've been absolutely crushing dad life. You were pointing out all the hazards we had at the office for kids.
Yeah, this place is not a daycare. Sorry.
How you liking dad life? Oh, it seems like you're thoroughly enjoying it.
Yeah, dad life is amazing. So I have a 3.5-year-old and a 16-month-old. So they are at like, the 3.5-year-old she can get dressed by herself. You know, that's like a big thing for her. And the 16.5-month-old, like she started walking last week. So like every day is just kind of like mind-blowing stuff for them.
Let's give them a little air horn for that. It's
Yeah.
a big achievement.
Yeah.
So once they can walk, too, that's when it's the danger zone because they're just getting into everything, huh?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, she was a really fast crawler, so we've been in the danger zone actually for like a while. But I was thinking of inspirations. I mean, in a nutshell, you know, like they are my number one inspiration for life. You know, like everything I do is in consideration of them and my wife. And then everything they do is like so inspiring for me. You know, you come home. Like when I come home from this trip, they're going to be like pretty stoked to see me and I'll be really stoked to see them. And they're so cute and they're so funny. And they're like, you know, like whatever BS you've got going on and in your own zone, they're just like hilarious, you know. So you just come in and it's just like, it just like all goes away. And you got to be totally present too, you know. So it's like a meditative act in a way.
Yeah, the kids are so like pure and untainted by bullshit, and they're just like so in the moment. And it seems like my sister's got a couple kids similar to your daughter's age, and like you just get on their level, and you're just like a kid too, and that'll kind of keep you young as well.
Yeah, literally on the floor, right?
Well, also, is that what keeps you young? Because you literally look the same age as like the last time I saw you 20 years ago. What the fuck's going on? Like what? Do you have Benjamin Button syndrome, or just kind of curious?
Oh man. I love to hear that. Thanks so much, Chris.
Did your brother age as well?
Yeah, well, it's just we slather on lots of sunscreen every day, and I also have some skin products.
Okay,
Sunscreen is clutch.
You
Yeah.
could potentially have a career being like a skin product influencer.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it might be. I have older brothers that are 50. And it actually might be something in the Huffman DNA.
Oh, really? They look young, too.
Yeah, so thank you, Mom and Dad. Thanks for saying that. It really makes my day, Chris.
I think we should talk about the celebrity lookalike question, Buds. Why don't you tee that one up?
Yeah, so if you were going to make a movie about your life, and you are a movie maker, so for you, this is a great question. Who would you get to play the role of Lucas Huffman?
If I was producing it, right, and I wanted to make a for TV remake, the movie of Lucas, and I want an actor that looked just like Lucas. I would get Steve Zahn, who, you know, a lot of people don't know Steve Zahn.
I know.
He's been in some great movies.
Yeah. American Pie is kind of like how most people know him from. And then he's done like a lot of TV work. And he looks like me. And the funky thing is that he actually talks like me. And I think he's got a similar like sense of humor as me as well.
Dude, ever since I saw him, I always just was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this is incredible. My wife and I always laugh about it.
Yeah. When we meet each other, there's going to be some serious chemistry.
Doppelganger.
However, I'm not the producer that wants to make a 4TV movie, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to do like a more moody, big, like emotional ups and downs festival hit that will then go on to win Oscars. And for that film, I would cast Matthew McConaughey as me playing Lucas, you know, and being able to make my life a lot more interesting and a lot more in depth and a lot cooler.
Incredible actor.
I would like to.
McConaughey.
I would like to see that happen. I can imagine
Yeah.
McConaughey like being Lucas Huffman at the top of a cheese wedge, like getting fired up to
Saying
drop
some
in
of
with
his
some
classic-
incredible one-liners.
Yeah, classic one-liners at the top of a cheese wedge. That'd be so good.
Yeah.
Let's
yeah.
get this movie going. Let's greenlight this thing.
Have to talk to Spielberg. Get some things going here.
You guys are going to need to sell a lot of liquid death to get a budget for Matthew McConaughey.
He might just be down, though. Like a project about snowboarding, he might be into it.
Yeah, you do have to have a lot of optimism to be a filmmaker.
So let's just run it back. We got a lot of stuff to cover, a lot of terrain to cover, you could say. And
Backcountry terrain.
yeah, we're going all over the board with this one. But I found it super interesting, kind of the story behind your first snowboard.
It all starts with Matthew McConaughey as a 9-year-old in Vermont. And yeah, so I was like, 9 and living in Montpelier, Vermont, smallest capital in the nation, the only capital in the nation without a McDonald's. And like a very small other amount of 9-year-olds, this is, like that's 86. Snowboarding's not a big thing, but there's Burton catalogs out there, and something about it just like caught my imagination. And my parents, I don't know how, my parents were not up for just like buying me a snowboard, and fair enough, you don't know what your kids are going to do. But my dad's really into making stuff. So we laminated together some plywood, as if you would make a skateboard. And then I remember just like we had this big pot of like boiling water on the stove, and we're holding it over there and like steaming the wood so that we could shape the nose out of it. Mm-hmm. And the shape was like exactly like a Burton backhill, which, like ironically now is like the powder jet shape. It's like a shape that's kind of how many ever years that is, like 40 years later is making a comeback. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we like steamed this wood and cut, and like we're able to shape up this nose. And then we put some cross-country ski bindings on it. I took it up to the sledding hill behind our house, and it was like an absolute failure.
I was going to say, if that thing worked, I mean, you guys made your first snowboard. That's incredible. I never heard the story.
Yeah. I mean, we certainly were.
It didn't ride, though.
It was handcrafted. I mean, the punchline is like, imagine trying to do a hillside turn with cross-country ski bindings.
Oh.
So like,
free your heel.
Yeah. You like just lean back and then just, and then just flop back. And then actually, just as a funny side note, shortly after that, I entered a scarecrow contest in Waterbury, Vermont. And the scarecrow, I was like obsessed with snowboarding. So everything was snowboarding, and the scarecrow was a snowboarder. And it was like my super cool, like CB jacket and my goggles, stuffed with hay, and then this like wooden snowboard, and it all got stolen.
No,
It's such a bummer.
even the CB gear.
Yeah. I mean, that was the biggest loss was the CB gear because that was functional, but like the snowboard, it would be nice to have it.
Yeah, if you had that now, woo.
Yeah.
So what was the first successful snowboard then?
Well, that was the Sims Micro Switchblade, which was like the Micro Palmer board, So and we got that at the B-side. Do you remember the B-side?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Bought plenty of boards at the B-side.
Yeah, so like Andy and Jack Coughlin, you know, like that was...
That was the boarding house.
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry, the boarding house.
B-side was their competition right down the street.
Right, yeah.
All of a sudden, Buzz is an encyclopedia. I love it.
Yeah,
so good.
He's Burlington
Burlington
80s trivia. That's what we should have done. Burlington 80s trivia.
I would have
It
killed
would have
it.
been a wrap. It would have been a wrap for you, Lucas, on that one.
Oh man, yeah. That's because I was 9. So yeah. But yeah,
Where I bought. I bought my first board from Jake at the
store.
Burton store that was in Central Vermont.
Yeah,
But then after that, all the boards I got were from either the B-side or the boarding house.
yeah. The board. Yeah, that that was cool. Because that was when like shops were like truly like the places for the culture to happen. And for mentorship to happen. Because those were old. They were like established racer dudes. But I remember I would come in and they would just be like, they'd come in the micro shredder. They'd be like, the micro shredder's here. But I think it was probably like pretty unique to have like a 9-year-old dude, coming into a snowboard store in '86. And so they really, they were like, they're really nice to me. And we got the Sims for Christmas. I knew we had it, but they wouldn't let me have it until like Christmas Day, and then I get up and it's there and I just fucking loved that board. It's like singed to see that board, in my room. That's like singed in my memory.
And you could actually go in and buy a board from a professional snowboarder that rode for Burton, and they had all the videos. It was pretty much one of the dopest places you can go as a kid.
Yeah, dude. And the like, I remember the Sims team came through. I got Terry Kidwell and Sean Palmer's like autograph on like a poster that would then go on to just like live, right at the head of my bed. I would like go to sleep like looking at this poster, of Palmer. Of Palmer. Then we could actually, I don't know if we could. I'd be happy to send that to you guys.
Yeah, let's drop it
that
in.
poster?
Send it
Yeah.
to us. We'll put it right on the frame when you
Yeah,
talk about it.
yeah. I just posted that a little while ago because I just like surfaced in my life and I was like, this thing. I went to sleep, like looking at Palmer like cranking, like his method, and he signed it. But that was all, because of like the Coughlin's, they would like bring people in and like promote the culture.
One thing I'm fascinated about too in regards to this stuff is you grew up with the twin brother. So how did you guys push each other, and what did those early days of snowboarding look like with you and Jesse?
Yeah. So we were twins, and both skated, and then both started snowboarding at like roughly the same time, and we're both like just obsessed, like in the way 9-year-olds can get about stuff, which then somehow also like a 19-year-old can get about stuff, and we would like just devour like the films together, so you had like a buddy, like you guys I assumed had like like some buddy that you guys would just like wear the tapes out with and stuff like that. Yeah. So it was like him, and then we would go like we could only shred on weekends. We're like in school, so like our mom would drive us up, and then be at the hill, from 9 a.m. to closing time to like 4 p.m. Like poor mom. When as a parent now, and I think back, like doing all that driving, it's a pain in the ass. And then, we would like just push each other. And so, like as I had like mentioned before, snowboarding was fun, but there was always kind of like a progression tension, when like he would learn, and he was better than me for many years. And then I maybe, like I progressed and got better than him for many years. And in those like many years when your brother's better than you, you're just like, just out of breath all the time, you're just like, wow, how come I'm not landing my threes, or like, and back then it was like, how does he like tweak his front leg on his indie so much, like, what am I doing? But it keeps the energy levels high, and it keeps like the progression going, like I would not be as good as I got, without like being competitive with him.
You got the same DNA, right? You should be able to tweak your leg the same as him.
We're fraternal twins.
Oh, fraternal. That's obviously you're not identical because you're very not identical.
Yeah.
So that's how that works with twins. Only the identical ones have.
Yeah, he got like a special tweak knee, and
You got the special tweak
he
knee?
got the
You
tweak.
didn't
Yeah.
you didn't get the tweak knee?
no, I got like the landing quads. He got the
the
tweaked
suspension.
knee. He had like a insane. He would do like these like front side 3 like lean methods. You know that I don't think I had the core flexibility. You know, for. He got the method core. He got the like all these things.
Do you ever have like, I've heard some stories about twins, and I don't know if this is identical or not, where you kind of are like connected on a weird level, where if something happens to them, you know that it happens or feel it.
Yeah, no, and
Yeah,
So you didn't get that either. Okay.
yeah, and yeah.
Hey, you guys could not be more opposite, huh?
Yeah, you know, like physically, like he looks like quite different than me. But I mean, now we are best of friends, you know, and I just moved back to Vermont from New York 2 weeks ago, and he lives there. And that's part of like one of the great things of moving back there is that like him and I just get to hang out all the time. No, I mean, like the main example for how that's not true is Jesse, like when we were 19, like first year after graduating, he broke his back super bad at Mount Hood in like a kind of like a high profile crash. Do you guys remember this?
I do.
Yeah. It was it was like in a Mac Dog movie, but you know, he like overshot like a hood jump after he gets salted, which probably happens
Classic.
too many times. But like he overshot, you know, by like 60 feet, and this
Yeah.
was like during like mega tabletop times. So he's like falling like, 90 feet out of the air. Broke his back pretty bad. And I remember I was in Vermont and came like back home from getting, ice cream or something like that. Evan Rose, I think like Evan Rose was there. It was like an Original Sin shoot or something like that. And I remember Evan just like calling and telling us about that. And like Evan, I just distinctly remember picking up the phone like, hey, Evan had blah, blah, blah. Had like zero idea this like ultra traumatic injury had happened to my brother. And I bring that up as an example of how we're not connected.
You didn't get the psychic. Something happened to me.
Yeah,
Like, my twin.
Yeah, it would be awesome. But I think if there was a psychic connection, that would have been when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
He would have reached out in the forest to you.
Yeah, and said, stop eating your ice cream, go home.
Please help
and
me.
Call Evan.
So growing up, I know I grew up doing Green Mountain Series. I think Bud's
I
grew
did
up doing
too.
Green Mountain Series.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I know that you are a Green Mountain Series.
Yeah. Was the Green Mountain Series still going, Chris, when you were?
Yeah, USASA, Green Mountain, yep.
Yeah, wow. And then was the New England Cup still happening?
No New England Cup, no.
But did you do those?
I only did a Green Mountain Series.
Yeah. Yeah, we did the Green Mountain Series, New England Cup, and the drill it wasn't a drill. Everything was being made up. So to call snowboarding a drill back then is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So what you would do if you wanted to go and see like the other 12 snowboarders in New Hampshire or the other 12 snowboarders in Maine is you do the Green Mountain Series, or the New England Cup was coming up too, but the New England Cup, like, remember like Todd Richards and the Swees, like those guys. Brushy like was kind of graduating from the New England Cup. Like that was like, I don't know why. That was more competitive, and that's where like the dudes, like some older guys were. But yeah, we did the Green Mountain Series, and I guess Jesse wasn't doing that because I was in the 12 and under division, and there was only 3 of us. So Jesse wasn't there. There's only 3. There was Zach Diamond and Ross Powers and myself.
Wow.
And
Heavy line.
Yeah, heavy lineup.
yeah, heavy lineup, and the stakes were super low because every contest you go to, you're placing top 3. So,
So your podium
Got a
every
podium.
time.
dude, yeah, it was a good confidence builder. No matter, like, which contest you go to, you're gonna like get a medal, maybe win. They're like Smart Food. I had like sponsored them. I had like boxes of Smart Food. I used to bring all these like Smart Food snacks to school. And as kind of a hero there.
You're kind of the man. Dude,
Yeah.
Man.
Lucas is good. Have you met Lucas? He's got the Smart Food
Yeah.
plug.
And all these medals, too.
Yeah.
He's got medals.
Yeah.
everywhere.
Podium for days.
Every Monday he'd come in. He'd be like have his own. I won. That's my mom didn't pack my lunch. I won my Smart Food.
That's sick. And then shortly, after, I know that you ended up getting on Original Sin, which I thought was a sick brand when I was a kid. Like I loved Original Sin.
Yeah, they were super cool, and especially in hindsight too. Like now that we're like older, and it seems like there's also more room in snowboarding for like what would be called the fine arts, like creativity. And yeah, they were our first sponsor. That's another like connected to Jesse experience. Dan Sullivan, who was like the regional rep, and this is when we snowboarded at Sugarbush. I remember he gave us a snowboard to share. That was like our first sponsorship move, and it was big. It was like a 150, and we were like 12. So it was like well above our heads. And I wish I could remember like how we like evenly distributed riding that board.
Making right there.
Because that's another thing about being a twin is like everything kind of needs to be fair. I will say that being a twin has kind of like raised me with a real awareness, maybe a hyper awareness of fairness.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask Jeff like to figure out somehow, but I don't know if like he wrote it on Saturdays and then I wrote it on Sundays, but we shared this board. And what I do remember is that it was just like the coolest thing, and this like snowboard in our house was like a Bible, it was like this sacred object, It was a free snowboard. Mm-hmm. But then, pretty quickly kind of like moved into just normal sponsorship. Like we had a board, one for equal.
One for each of you.
Yeah, yeah, an equal sponsorship. I guess we called them out and we said, this isn't fair.
Yeah, this is not cool, man.
You're getting 2 for 1. That's a good deal for OSIN, though.
Make you guys fight over it. That's kind of
we'll
a
send
rough
them
move.
one, and they'll be Lord of the Flies vibe
whoever
over
ends
there.
up with the board is going to be the sponsored rider.
Yeah.
But you both made it.
Yeah, and then we were both like in our ad, we were like, I think the first ad might have even said like Snowboard Twins or something. But they were a really cool company, and they, because they had Herb George was the one person there, which means he's the creative director / team manager / pro writer as well, like / everything. And he had like, an attraction to like the New York arts scene. And so the graphics would be, what was back then, like in the early 90s, just like New York City up and coming artists, but who have now, gone on to have like legit, like fine art careers. And they were like a part of, like I remember they skated a lot too. Everyone on OSIN like skateboarded a lot. And it was pretty clear that they were like trying to build a snowboard team to be like a skateboard team before any other, like snowboard company kind of caught wind to that formula. And so they would just like, so the artists would be like up in Burlington, the company was actually from Colchester, but everyone who ran the company also went to UVM, so there was a lot of interesting stuff going on in Burlington. And Jesse and I were like 16 at the time. And I remember in particular taking like a van trip. We made a movie called Cinderella, which did you ever hear?
Yep.
Yeah, like deep, dark cult classic.
Deep, dark.
It's in the depths.
Had you heard of Cinderella?
No, I've never heard of it.
Oh man, it actually is up on the East Street Archives. You guys are familiar with?
We'll put it in the show notes. We'll find it.
Yeah. The video is like, I actually just watched it for the first time in a long time because it just got digitized, and had forgotten that of the like 24 minutes of video, there's 6 minutes of snowboarding. And the rest of it is like, we all got into an RV. This is my brother and I are 16 at the time. My parents were somehow let us go and do this, get in an RV with the rest of the original Sin team, which are like, skate party animals / college students from UVM, drive to Colorado by way of New York. And it's like that stop on the video too. I'm like, oh yeah, we like stopped in Chicago to like skate a ledge on the way to Colorado, and then got to Colorado, mind blowing snowboarding, because this is like 16, and Ali was there. Ali was like the raddest, OSIN rider at the time.
He was my roommate at the time. I remember you guys coming out.
Oh yeah,
We actually shared a bed back in that time, and I remember you guys coming out.
in the van.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like a crazy stinky van, like beer, farts.
There's like
beer.
spray painted or marker on the outside of it or something like that.
Yeah, You heard about this?
I got some intel from your brother on that.
Oh yeah. And it was pretty eye-opening as far as like what people in their 20s do, like what. And I had a pretty insane, like mind-blowing just experience snowboarding coming from Vermont, like the highest mountain is Stowe. It's like 4,500 feet. And then going to Vail, which I don't know, like starts at 7,000 feet.
Yeah.
Something like this, And then driving back, and on the way back, we of course had to like go through Texas to like skate another ledge there, and then go, and this stuff is like seared in my memory. And then we parked, and then we make it to outside the Max Fish in New York City on the Lower East Side, which is like a skate haven and artist haven, and we like just parked the RV out there all night long, and we just slept there. And now in hindsight, as a person who lived in New York City, I was like, well, that's dangerous. And then somehow, like made it back.
Well, this kind of ties in perfectly with a guest question from Ali. Here we go.
Nice.
What's up, Lucas, Grand Diesel, E-Stone, Bombhole listeners? Greetings. Lucas, super hyped on your progression in life. Can't wait for this episode to come out and take it all in. 2 questions. 1, what was the Clearwater Sports team? And question 2, what was it like growing up riding Sugarbush Resort as a Grom? Can't wait to hear about it. You guys be well.
Yeah, buddy. Oh, man. Nice ones, Ali. The rewinding. So Clearwater was a small shop in Waitsfield on the way to Sugarbush, and was like one of the first shops in the area to carry snowboards, like along with their like kayaks and windsurf stuff. And they also too, like these stores were so important because they put together a little snowboard team and would like drive us to the Green Mountain Series contests. And as part of being on their team, you got a Bula headband. And that was the other sacred item in our house. We had like the Share snowboard and the Bula headband, like on a mantle. Just, I would pray to those when I got up every day. And I had like Clearwater Sports like stitched into it. Headbands were also like a must-have in in the mid '80s. And so to have someone like give you a headband was to have arrived.
Oh yeah, just and just to be able to say like, I'm sponsored.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just like, that's it. This just feels so good.
Yeah.
Did you guys have to share a headband, or they got you each one?
It was super big, so we would sit next to each other, and they would wrap it around each other at the same time. And my left ear would warm Jesse's right ear, and it was a kind of like a familiar thing, being womb mates and all.
There it is. There it is. Kind of Siamese, a little bit of a slight Siamese headband action.
Action.
Yeah, that way you don't have to share the snowboard either.
Yeah, that's perfect.
But and then growing up on, like being a Grom riding Sugarbush, I think there's like kind of like 2 elements to that. One is just being like a small person on a mountain and fucking awesome, just like shredding everything, like every tree. It's kind of like an East Coast. Actually, I don't know. I mean, if there's an East Coast mentality or not, but there's like, you just shred everything: trees, rocks, curbs, like into the woods to like go over the like rock that's there and hit the stump on the way back, because that's all there is, like terrain wise. So shredding everything. But then, I mean, when I think of Grom, I think of the like place on the totem pole, and I was, many years, I would be like in middle school and going to snowboard with like Ali and Seth and Jason King and Eric Kurth. There was like these guys that were in high school that were also, when I think back about I must have been like just an annoying little 8th grader. And I know now too, when, that age differences feel like a lot when you're in like high school, but they were like so nice and took me in, and would also like haze me. There was like being a Grom, because I think what he's talking about is like, being a Grom in that like crew of snowboarders, which, like, they're all Vermont high schoolers, so it's probably better than being a Grom at like Hunter Mountain or something like this, So they were super nice, but I give Neary, actually, whenever I talk to Neary, I bring this up as well, but he says he only did this a couple times, but in my memory, every time my mom would pack me a lunch, they would be like, "What's in your lunchbox?" And then like eat the lunch that my
They
mom
would eat your
packed me.
Classic.
Dude, I want to touch on what you were just talking about there with the East Coast style riding, because I grew up riding a lot of the mountains in Vermont, as did Buds, and it's almost like every little undulation in the snow is like a feature. You know, you're like everything. You know, I notice sometimes as you move out west, a lot of times it's like A to B. We're going from the chairlift to the park, and we're pretty much going straight if you're riding park. Whereas, quote, air quotes, East Coast style, I would describe it as like little side hits on the way, hitting a log, hitting everything the whole way down because the mountain's so shitty.
Right, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, you were like really scoring if you could hit what we called whales, you know, like the snow gun, those like big like snow mounds that the snow guns had left, or you'd hear that like, dude, there's some whales on that closed trail, you know, and you would go over and like shred those, because this is all like pre-park. But yeah, you're right. And when I talk about like progression with my brother, you know, doing like frontside 360s, that's like off a mogul, you know, like, and but you know, it like makes you a super good turner, right? Because it's also like in between the mogul and in between the tree and the stump. Most times it's icy, and you gotta like have your edge control together. So I mean, I only can speak for myself and legions of other East Coast killer, you know, like riders that have killed it. But yeah, I think it does. Like, it makes you like your fundamentals get like really good, and you know this, Chris. Like your fundamentals get really good, and it certainly, I know that it really like makes you maximize what's in front of you. However, when I then moved out west, that was just like, you know, like holy shit, like, you know, we graduated high school, and then moved like that winter to Jackson Hole. And then like, you know, like went to stay with some other Original Sin rider and like crashed on their couch, for which turned into much too long.
Classic. Know? That's just tale as old as time. There.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you know, I think back on it, how annoying that must have been for like that was Rob Duncan. We went to stay with Rob Duncan, who's got like a girlfriend and probably like, yeah, you know, and like trying to have a normal life, and then like not one but two, like
two of you,
two 19-year-olds show up and they're just frothing, and they're like, why aren't you going to ride with us today? You know,
around this, or sorry to interrupt you, but around this time, I talked to George Kleckner, and he mentioned, like, when he rode with you when you first moved out west, you set some goal, and maybe this is baloney, maybe it's not, but where you would try to scare yourself every day.
Yeah. Well, so this is exactly what I was about to mention.
Yeah.
Is that, so that first year we moved to Jackson Hole. Jackson Hole's like the steepest resort in North America, coming from Sugarbush and Mount Mansfield, the unsteepest resort.
The flattest place on earth.
The flattest, iciest. Well, not true. You know, the last 12 years I've been living in New York. Mountain Creek has been my home mountain, which is much flatter. But we go out there, and I just remember, you know, following Rob around and some other like Jackson Hole lokes, and every day we rode, you'd be like, well, you can't do that on this. You know, we'd roll up to, you know, bushwhack through the trees, and you roll up, and there's like some like super sketchy like pillow line, and we roll up there, and we're like, well, you can't do that, you know, and then Rob just like sends it and does it, and there's like a pit in your stomach when you're like, oh, you can do that, you know, and then sure enough, you go and do it, and it was like almost like every day we were like in these like super like adrenalized, you know, like situations, and every day we were like, oh, this is possible, that's possible, blah 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 blah, and yeah, man, when I think back on it now, I'm just like, oh, I'm getting nervous, you know, like just thinking about it. The progression that happened in my writing, you know, like alone in that 1 year, I mean, there wasn't a lot of like landing stuff going on, but there was a lot of like mind opening stuff about what is like physically possible if you could land, you know, on your snowboard. And then also too, I did get, like, George is onto something. You know, I got kind of like in tune with like when something scares you, something's going down that like is at the limits of what you can do on your snowboard. And then sadistically, I kind of like somehow, you know, in my mind, I got it as like a guide map that when you like feel that fear, you know, like that pit in your stomach, like that adrenaline, that some shit's about to go down. you
Yeah.
know? And I guess, you know, like thinking back on it now, you know, like as what I was doing got like bigger and bigger, you know, you kind of, when you're actually in that situation, gets like gnarlier and gnarlier, you know? Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of actually like served me pretty well, but to like go out of your way. So you're in the Canadian backcountry, right? And you're looking at like a big face and you're kind of getting up there. We're always like cruising around. You're not just like looking at stuff from the bottom and being like, yeah, okay, well, I'm going to go up and do that. You know, you're kind of like poking around, seeing stuff and like looking at features. And some features you can like just, you know, see the landing right there and you're like, well, yeah, you know, that'll be okay. And then some features have something to them where you're like, this would be pretty scary to hit. Mm-hmm. And then I'd be like, this is the one I'm going to hit.
You know what's interesting when I think about when I think of your career, like you as a snowboarder, I picture like you know, like an old whitey type of frame where it's like you're coming down the hill, kind of zoomed out, and you're hitting like some type of pat down wedge, and you're going further than everybody, like in the tracks, and you're like known for like going huge, hitting the biggest stuff. And when we were talking on the phone last night, kind of before your interview, you mentioned you would watch like some certain skate videos to get you hyped, and it kind of made sense with the way that you go fucking huge on all the shit you're hitting.
Yeah. Because that was like right when, you know, the Zero videos were coming out. The whole, you know, Zero, like all the Zero videos during that time for sure. But then if you'd only, you know, had 10 minutes in the morning, you'd like fast forward to Jamie Thomas's part. And then Heath Kirchart too, you know, like, but he also too had like the stuff he was doing was obvious, you know, was like crazy, and you'd watch it and you'd be like, that's sick. But there's also something about his like style and like how he was doing it, and like that really resonated with me. But I feel like, yeah, it was like watching those, you know, like skate videos, like in the morning or like the night before too, you know, like, you know, you're going to go do something tomorrow. I would like, watch like the Zero video and I guess the Birdhouse videos must've been coming out then too. Cause I remember Keith just being like, that's who I want to be on a snowboard.
Mm-hmm. And then going back to what you were just talking about, like, all right, if I see something and it scares me, like that's what I want to do. Like, I think that's kind of a fascinating thing, because when you think about it, like, I'm just curious, as like you watch yourself going in, everybody else must be taking speed checks. You look like you don't weigh a lot. Like, you know, normally the guy that doesn't weigh a lot has to start way higher to go bigger. And so I'm like, is he just going dead straight into the wedge, or what's going on there, you know?
Well, there's a couple things there. One is that, right, so you've had a session and like the landings that are left are going to be way down there, you know? So if you want to land something, you're going to have to like go past the bomb hole, right? Just keep driving past the bomb hole. And so there's like some motivation, you know, like there. And then we did like a lot of step downs too, you know, like a lot of the stuff where like it's like really visible, you know, like where the tracks are is like step down situation. And in a lot of step downs, the difference, you know, in going 20 feet past the landing when you come in is actually not, you know, it's like hiking up maybe a foot farther, or just like doing one less speed check, you know, and then you just kind of like go down there.
Around that time, you also were kind of just getting your foot in the door. I think you got a couple of clips in some Whitey videos, but the climate of these videos, it's like 16 millimeter. It's like, you know, the only way you're getting in this video is it needs to be a fucking banger, you know? And that's not what it's like today. Today's like, I'm going to go get some shit and put on my gram, and then maybe I'll get sponsored, you know, where then it's like, if I want to make it, I'm going to I got to do some psycho stuff, right?
Yeah.
Different mentality.
Yeah, there certainly was, you know, and at that age, you know, I was like 19, 20, and to, you know, like prove it to the crew too, you know, like it certainly felt that way. Yeah, is it that you had to like walk away from the session being the dude who went the biggest.
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
And I will say too, I mean, I remember like, you know, filming with the Whitey crew was like really socially intimidating to me, you know, because those guys, like, they were badass. They were like truly punk rock, you know. And I mean, to you know, I grew up as like a nerd, you know, like, so I grew up, I like snowboarded.
Love
And,
that.
You know, like I've snowboarded my face off, but I also like I played lacrosse. You know, I played soccer. I didn't hang out with snowboarders. I hung out with all these kids that like went to college, and like my just kind of like threshold for just bullshitting and drinking and like doing drugs was like very low, and for just like being funny, you know, because those dudes like you'd go. I mean, I remember more, you know, with Whitey, just like the atmosphere, you know, like at the top of a jump, and like J2's there, you know, who is, you just can't compete with like his like sociability.
Very witty dude, huh?
Yeah,
He's a banter
Yeah,
god.
he's a banter god.
oh man, yeah. And then him and Whitey, who had like such a good, you know, like shared experience as well.
They were
And,
best friends.
Yeah,
for
best
sure.
friends in their like relation, you know, and Ali, and then, you know, and Merriman, you know, too, like a couple sessions where like, but the like the substance of like their relationship was like just ripping each other apart, you know, and me just being like, oh, you know, like I'm so scared of these guys, you know. And honestly, I'm thinking about it now, you know, like more anxiety that they would just be like, you're a fucking tool, than the jump.
You'd rather just go huge on the jump.
Yeah, so like there was certainly like in like emotionally like unhealthy part of, you know, being in that crew, which forced me to just kind of like go interior on my snowboarding and make my snowboard talk, you know, like my snowboarding talk. And then also too, you know, like Whitey, like in between all the parts, there was lots of stuff where like these guys as like off snowboard character would come through, and to like have a like kick-ass part in a Whitey film, and Mikey too, you know, Mikey also had like a great personality, you know, and like character off snow, is that to have like a kick-ass part, you needed to be like an entertaining person, you know?
Yeah.
And I was pretty boring. And so like, it was definitely during those, you know, during the Whitey era, I was like, well, I'm going to be the guy who's like really good at snowboarding in the movie. You know? And yeah, I remember actually being in like an edit session, and he's like cutting together his like interstitial stuff, his like transitions, and them just being like, why don't you ever say anything funny?
Seriously?
Yeah, it was something to that tune,
To that degree.
to the degree where I was like really aware that like I wasn't doing any, you know, I wasn't like a personality on camera, and but that also became like kind of my thing. I was like, well, I'm just going to be a kick-ass snowboarder, and luckily, you know, like in snowboarding, that's what you need to do.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
If you want to be a pro snowboarder, being good at snowboarding is a good component
J2
for that.
was like more personality
he
than
was
anything else.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
And Whitey was pretty like, he was intense to be around. Like he picked people he wanted to be around based on who he wanted to shoot and all that. So he like,
Yeah.
he was intense.
Yeah, I also too. I mean, like the caveat is that I was like super insecure about, you know, my place in snowboarding, and I was like 20, and when you're like 20, you're insecure whether you're at college or walking down the street.
Yeah.
You know, and then to be in like that like crew exasperated that, you know, but they did, you know, and again, you know, in hindsight, it's like really fucking cool that like Whitey could do that, you know, and that Whitey could like the Kingpin crew was like more of a team than the snowboard team, you know, and it was like more of like a culture, you know, and it was more of like what was marketed, and it was super intense though. Yeah, because those guys all came from like legit, you know, like Whitey came from like real punk rock in Washington, D.C., And I came from like a super soft and like delicate Vermont place.
Everybody's just like nice in Vermont. They're not like dickheads.
Yeah.
Another thing too, though, you think about everybody has a shtick in snowboarding, you could say, right? And like J2's was being fucking hilarious and like hitting street rails and all that. And then everybody in the crew, you could go down the line with Mikey, but it's like your shtick was just like going fucking huge, which is a great shtick to have, you know, like that's also
Why he
a good
needed
angle.
that in the movie. I mean, his movies were kind of, at the time, they were like the shit. So
Yeah. Well, but you know, that did like kind of like help me. I don't know what you call it, you know, like whether it's like maturing or just kind of like getting in your head, you know, like what you want to do in snowboarding. And it wasn't really like by choice. Probably if I was like funnier, then I could have like chilled on my snowboarding, you know, like a little bit. But there was like, I mean, I had like a drive to like be as successful as I possibly could in snowboarding. So that was like certainly there. And that's like a part of my personality that persists today, is like a certain intensity, you know, that professional snowboarders have. But then within just like that community, I had to do it like a lot, you know, to like find a way, you know, like off the cutting floor, you know, and like into the films. And I mean, I certainly remember being like, these guys don't want me around, so I'm just gonna like snowboard, so they have to have me.
Good logic.
great
I
logic.
like that. I think this is a perfect time to pivot into the Liquid Death spinning wheel of death. Woo. Now, Buds, how many of those Liquid Ds you put down today?
I'm at number 3 right here, dog.
Well, I think we're gonna have to sell about 70,000 of these so we can get Matthew McConaughey on the docket for the Lucas Huffman film.
It's going to be a bomb hole production.
Yeah, bomb hole production, and if you're
It's gonna be called Lucas's Liquid Death Part 2.
they actually just recently made a horror movie. I found out we were supposed to watch it and talk about it when we watch it. But so Liquid Death, if you're interested in picking some up, head on over to liquiddeath.com/bombhole. Again, liquiddeath.com/bombhole. You'll get yourself a few koozies. And with that, let's get into the Wheel of Death.
Welcome to the Liquid Death.
Death. Spinning wheel of
Okay, you explain what's going on, Buds. Oh, first, I'm going to preface this with, since you were mentioning nerdy shit, I just put a bunch of nerdy shit on the Liquid Death spinning wheel of death. So
Am I allowed to like look at it, or is that part of the deal? I don't see it.
The camera's got to see it. We'll tell you.
We'll tell you what you wrote, what you hit. You're going to give it a good old spin so it spins around nice.
Like this.
There you go. It's just math problems.
Math problems.
Those are problems for me.
Okay, we landed on math problems, but we tried those and it was a horrible failure. So we're going with spelling bee.
All three of us couldn't figure out the first one.
I blanked.
So we're just cutting right to spelling bee. Okay,
Yes. Y-E-S.
first word is going to be for Lucas, and it's intelligible.
Intelligible. I-N-T-E-L-L-I-G-A-B-L-E.
Incorrect. It's I-B-L-E. I thought you were an Ivy League student graduate, but turns out.
I'm an intelligible league student graduate.
Okay. All right, Buds, I have a word for you. It is car.
Can you use that in a sentence?
I drove my car to work today.
C-A-R.
That's correct.
Car.
Okay.
Man.
All right.
Nice.
I have a question. Now this one's for
Did
you,
you know
Lucas.
did you know this was going to happen,
No.
Stone? You already know where this is headed, huh?
All right.
He just knows my
He
skill level.
wrote down mine, and you didn't even write down yours.
All right. Next one's diabolical.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
In a sentence, I'll use that in a sentence. This is kind of more my thing, is using things in sentences.
Okay.
The diabolical Matthew McConaughey hits this diabolical jump. D-I-A-B-O-L-I-C-A-L.
That's correct.
I wrote that down. I got that right.
Okay, Buds. The word we're going to use is the.
I like to use them in a sentence too. The car goes fast. The THE.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. We got a big one for you here. The next one for you, Lucas, is zeitgeist.
Wow, I don't even know what that means.
It's the spirit of the age.
Zeitgeist.
Yeah. Spirit of the age.
Well, the age being like the times would be.
So that's a
I
that's
have
a
that.
diabolical word.
This is something that I'm good at is, again, using words as sentences. So the diabolical car is in a zeitgeist of traffic right now. Zeitgeist being ZIETGIEST.
Incorrect. I got it backwards. It's ZEIT.
ZE.
So
Everything else is right, though. Okay, the word for you, buds, this time is sanctimonious.
Are you sure that's not for him?
The word for you is sanctimonious.
Do you want to use that in a sentence?
No.
Could I?
Yes.
The sanctimonious shared snowboard and Bula headband rested in the corner.
Yeah,
Oh, this
that's
guy's
correct.
good.
That's correct. Contextually, he's very good with it.
SANTIMONIOUS.
It's incorrect. SANCTIMONIOUS. So I think
One letter off.
So
Hey,
Buds
you
has
can't please everybody.
No.
Right? That's the thing about spelling.
you know everybody.
Please everybody with how you spell it.
All right. Well,
True.
the last one we're gonna ask for Lucas is Pharaoh.
Oh, the Fields Lay Pharaoh. FARROW.
No, incorrect.
pharaoh,
no,
like,
like an
put a
Egyptian,
pharaoh in a
Egyptian
sarcoph-
casket
sarcophagus?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. The diabolical pharaoh came up from his sarcophagus. Or Pharaoh Monch.
Pharaoh Monch, the rapper.
PHARAOH.
Wow. I think that's a draw. I believe, right? 2-2.
Win, lose, or draw.
We're gonna call everybody wins here at the Baumel. It's
Nice.
kind of a feel good event.
Yeah.
So,
Can't
That's
wait
great.
to do the push-ups, though.
yeah, we were gonna do
You
a
guys
push-up
gonna do a
contest,
push-up
physical
challenge?
challenge
You and I are going to do a push-up contest.
on the table or what?
On the table?
You guys want to do an aging contest? We'll just sit here and see who ages the less.
You're going to win
Yeah,
that.
it's already gonna win. I don't know. We got to get his skincare routine. All right, let's dive back into kind of some boarding stuff because I know you ended up, fast forward, you got in with the Kingpin guys, and then you got, and this is probably out of order, but I know getting on Nitro was huge for you.
Yeah, shortly after high school, OSIN folded, and then Seth Neary, who had eaten my lunch my mom packed, he was like the big dog on Nitro, and he got us on there. It was just like, one of those phone calls where he's like, would you like to ride for Nitro with Seth and I? And it's like, when I think about it now, it's like full circle, it's like the people that you grew up with, that they're always looking out for you. Just total side note, he actually hires me now. He's got like a pretty kick-ass agency, Driven Studio. Shout outs to them. And I like do filmmaking work with him now. And he's still, he's the one who makes the call. I don't call him. He calls me. He says, hey, you want to do this project with me?
He's out of Vermont doing that?
Yeah, in Burlington.
That's
it's
so
like,
cool.
yeah. So yeah, he got me on Nitro, and then I stayed with them, for my entire career. And I got so lucky there, when I had seen also too, like snowboarders and their relationships with their sponsors. And, it truly is like a relationship. There's like people at the brand, and they have personalities and interest, and also, like thoughts for what they want to do with the brand, and like where the brand is, in their maturity. And then snowboarders and snowboarders' personalities, and kind of like where they are in their like career maturity. And Nitro was a, like at that legacy at that time. That's like a bit over the top, but they had been around since the beginning in Europe, and were making like a marketing push in the U.S. And I was kind of like a part of that, you know, and so that like was also really lucky in that they weren't like a super well established board company, like super cool, you know,
They're kind of Euro kooky a little bit at that time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, they were like Euro kooky. Trying to think, like at that time too, there was like maybe like M3 was just starting, you know, so you compare it to like an M3, which is just like cool out of the box. And you know, me and I was also kooky, so there was that element. I certainly didn't feel like, you know, like if I had been on M3, I would have felt stressed out again, you know, that I was like the dorkiest dude in the van. But I was certainly one of the coolest guys on the Nitro team. So that was like a softball for me, socially. And then the boards were kick-ass. And that was another thing, actually, now that I'm seeing some kind of parallels, you know, like on the fly here. But the product was awesome, you know, and it felt similarly, I guess, you know, like to me, which is like my product was snowboarding and being the best snowboarder I can be. And the packaging was rough around the edges, you know, and Nitro was like the same. So so it was like a pretty good, you know, match like from the beginning, and then they like really stood behind me through the whole thing, you know, and as like my career matured, their brand also, you know, like matured. The board stayed the same. That's like the thing, you know, is like you got to have the product to be in it for the long run, you know, and then like the marketing magic and all the stuff, which is around snowboarding and is around snowboard industry. Cause at the end of the day, it's like a big marketing exercise. That stuff, you know, comes and goes, and it's so hard too. Cause like tastes come and go, and we've seen it's an endless cycle, right? Of like what's cool and what's not cool, what's cool, what's not cool. And, so I was a part of Nitro becoming cool is such a bad word too, you know, because like for me to say I was part of Nitro becoming like cool, everyone knows what that means, but just for the record, like that seems like really like vapid, you know, like there's like actually not much real value in that. But anyway, that's an aside. I'm going to interrupt you though and say, you know, speaking with Tonino, doing my notes, those were his exact words. Like Nitro was kind of Euro kooky, and Lucas was a huge part of making the brand cool, and why people like Austin Smith and Brian Fox and like the next wave of generation were like okay to ride with it. He gave an example that like when he got the job as a team manager at Nitro, he tried to get Whitlake on and stuff, and he's like, "No, dude." They offered him a boatload of money. They're like, "I'm good. Nitro's not cool." Yeah. You know, so that's kind of now it's a really cool brand, for, you know, and so that you know it's probably weird for you to say that, but other people did say that for you. So. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I certainly like felt like respect would be a word that I'm more comfortable with throwing around. You know, it's like respected, and I do love that like snowboarding has a lot of like aesthetics involved, you know, like ads, that's like art, you know, and like just person at crafting kind of like team culture, you know, like I respect that. So yeah, and Nitro, you know, kind of like came online in America, you know, like at the same time that I was. And what was, you know, really like kind of, I mean, I'll say it like empowering as like a dude who's like 23, and I've always had like a creative instinct, you know, like there's like the snowboarding, but so Mike Dawson was like their like creative director, you know, and he was just like, to me, you know, like a art god, you know, and the graphics, I guess the big part of becoming respected / cool is your board graphics, right, and your ads, and he was behind that, and the graphics and the aesthetics of it were like also like just in line with like stuff that was like authentically like really exciting for me, you know. So like it wasn't like I had to like wear some baggy pants and do like some M3 sort of things. I was just like, oh, Mike's like my dude, you know, like him and I can like bro out and we can look at art books and we've got like just like the same aesthetic values. And what was crazy is we'd go to like these design meetings in this like little house, you know, like out in like Redmond, Washington. And there was Sheen Campos, you know, was on the team at the time. And he was Canadian, you know, and like living in Canada and being like getting into like the Canadian scene was also like just a big thing, you know, as far as my experience goes. And we'd all like sit in the room, and he'd like have all these board mock-ups. You know, have you guys ever been in those meetings?
Oh, yeah.
Right? You know, like as a fan of snowboard, just industry stuff, you know, I'd be like, oh, you know, these are going to be like the boards next year, you know, like so cool, you know, like, and I'm seeing them now. And then he would be like, well, which ones do you like, you know? And like he created, and I got to give him credit too, like they created an environment where I felt like really comfortable just being like myself and like making like what are like actually like creative choices, you know, like with Mike. And then we would get to like choose all this stuff. And then eventually as I got like my pro model, I mean, I think one of the cool things about getting a pro model is you can like kind of determine what's on your graphics, which for better or for worse from like a sales point of view.
Yep, exactly.
But it like was really, you know, like a really great experience for like a young person like me who would then go on to have like a creative career, you know, to be like, oh shit, like these people are like taking me seriously. And, you know, I mean, I'll just reiterate, like at that time, when you're in like your early 20s, a lot of my friends, you know, were at college and they're doing like academic exercises and this and that. But these were like things that would then show up in like a catalog. And I'd go to like a store the next year and be like, oh yeah, I got to like choose those graphics, you know? And it was like, they gave us like the riders, you know, like a lot of just kind of like power and say, which was something that, you know, when I think back on it now, like really kind of like instilled in me like a confidence too, just to be like, oh, I could like do things that make like a real change.
Mm-hmm. And even more so too, when you look at a kid in his early 20s and you're kind of struggling to fit in. Like as I was hearing you talking, you're kind of like, I don't know if I fit in with the Whitey crew, and like you're just kind of like looking for some validation and appreciation, and all of a sudden you're with this brand that like makes you feel a part of something, and you have input, and it makes you that much more hyped to be a part of like a, you know, family or a brand like Nitro, and then have that lifelong career. That's probably a special moment as a kid.
Yeah. So shortly after that, you know, I got picked up by Northwave and Drake, and they were, you know, like really instrumental in my career, you know, and having faith in me as a rider, and then putting resources in me as a rider. And they too, so they were run by Italians. Did you guys, I'm not sure how much backstory you know, but yeah.
Just explain it to the people that don't know though.
Yeah, so like Northwave was also like an older boot company that was Euro Cookie, right? And the licensing of it had been purchased by Gumby, who's like, you know, just the board sports marketing guru. He did Vision Streetswear. Did you guys know that?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. So like VSM, VSW, that like he had done that. You think?
Oh, VSM.
So they had like, you know, they were doing like basically the same thing, which was like bringing this super kick-ass product. They were the best boots. Like the product was like the best in the world, bringing them and putting them into like the US kind of marketing machine. But part of riding for those brands is that, you know, multiple times a year, you'd go like over to Europe and you'd like hang out with the European snowboard community. And I remember at a time, like a lot of American snowboarders would be like, oh, I got to go to Europe, and Europe is full of kooks, right? Like, how fucked up is that? If someone's like, hey, like, you guys want to go to Europe on a free snowboard trip? And then people being like, that's not cool. You know, if someone called me today and was like, do you want to go to Europe on a snowboard trip? I'm like, sign me up. I'll be a 100% kook the whole time.
Yeah.
But I had like also too, that was like part of it, you know, that allowed me, I think, to really like just get along okay on those brands, is that I wanted to go to Europe and like see the world, and had a like personality that got along with the Europeans.
You didn't have the cool guy factor that shot it down.
Yeah. It's like so weird to say that out loud. I don't know if that's like still a thing now, because it looks like snowboarding's pretty like international now.
Mm-hmm. There's not a big like Euro kooky thing that is, it's not like that anymore. I don't think.
Right. Yeah. Like Europeans are born cool now.
Yeah.
You know, and like
Europeans are born cool now.
Yeah, they're
cooler. They're born cooler than us. And like deep thought, maybe it has something to do more with like the globalization of like the media of the world than in what we're talking about, which is like, the late 90s, like early 2000, when it was really just snowboard magazines, like what you knew about, this is before the internet, right? So before, what you knew about European snowboarders came from like a picture of like Max Perot doing like a power carve in Serbia, And that was part of the Nitro thing, is like I loved going there, and I loved like just meeting new people and having like new experiences. And I mean, to this day, I think this is actually why I'm do okay as a film director, is that it's about like making a lot of different personalities feel comfortable and just like showing up to places with openness, and that like, so that I could be, like I loved going on like the team trips, a Nitro team trip means that you're with, like Sheen and I and Mark Riley, right? And then like a whole bunch of other Europeans, and like they're approaching life differently, and I thought that was cool. And the same thing with Northwave, is like we would go over and do a fair amount of like sales meetings, or the photo shoots would be over there. Like you'd be over there, and like I got along well with like the European riders and like the European bosses, like getting along with the boss helps. And then just being in the right place, where back in America, both, all those companies kind of had like the right people doing the right things in their marketing department being like one person in like a house with like a computer.
That person maybe being George Kleckner as well, is a part of that, is a big part of that.
Yeah, well, actually, Northwave and Drake, they had a whole building. The Nitro was, that was Mike Dawson in a house with like a early iMac. Mm-hmm. But Northwave somehow started with like a big ass warehouse and a cool building in Seattle and an entire staff. But then George, making like a lot of choices about the team and the culture of the team, and who he's bringing on. And a team manager is kind of like curating the team. So it's up to them. It's like the stuff that you're interested to, that you guys are interested in is what the podcast is. That's natural to you guys. Like the team manager is like the riding that they're interested in. That's on the team.
And going back to that shift, I mean, I was that shift of like Northwave and Drake being cool. I was that demographic as a kid of like that exact change, because I remember vividly, I had the red and yellow Drakes, and I was so hyped on them. And
like the McDonald's
style. The McDonald's style, and I loved them. Those. And then the Mikey LeBlanc Drakes shortly after, and so like it's just interesting talking to George, and you being a big part of that as well. Like kind of, it was like just right at me. I was the consumer of that exact product.
Yeah.
And then Gumby and George went on to do C3, so they obviously knew what they were doing.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, Northwave was like one like train stop along the way of Gumby's like Cool Express train. I mean, I remember just kind of learning about him. And I was like an action sports geek, so like kind of learning like, oh, you did Vision Streetswear. I mean, I had the shorts, and being like, you're the fucking dude who like invented that little square, and then seeing everything that they were doing at like Northwave and Drake. And it's just like good decision after good decision. So like C3 is like another, walk in the park for those guys. They're like super good at what they do.
Yeah, they just
absolutely,
and they hone their skills as they go and get better and better.
Yeah. And Johan, right? Like so, Johan was part of that. Another scary snowboard guy.
Best salesman in snowboarding, right there.
So while you're talking about all this, kind of traveling and wild trips, I have a guest question from a legend named Tonino Copine, who was the Nitro team manager, a previous rider previous to that around this time. And he had a specific question about some of your travels here. Here we go.
Hey, Luke. This is Tonino. So hyped you're on the bomb hole. I was wondering if you could elaborate on some of your and Marco's rap battles in Japan. Hope all is well. Hope you guys have fun. Thanks. Bye.
Yes. That's what we should have done. We should have done Wheel of Death freestyle.
Oof. Buds, yeah, he'll fire one up.
Dang. And we could have, we could have had some.
You
like,
and Marco used to
beats.
freestyle?
Yeah.
I take it you weren't the nervous little kid anymore, huh?
At that
You're there
point.
battling MFM.
Yeah. Well, you know, Marco and I got along like really well because I mean, Marco also is like an outsider in snowboarding. He's like, you know, one of the handful of snowboarders of color who like certainly came from, I think, a lot of different background than like upper middle class white folks, whether you're a punk rocker from DC or, you know, a gentle person from Vermont or a asshole from Massachusetts.
Well said.
But yeah, we would go, like, I remember in Japan, I mean, it helps to have like a lot of beers going. But we'd be in Japan, everywhere we went, man, we would just like, rap battle, rhyme, like off the cuff, you know, and get into it. And I remember, MFM and I got along really well. And this one particular time, I had some shoes. They actually look a lot like, those are like the Osiris's back there.
Those are Eaststone's
This is
DVSs,
Eaststone
some
Pro
big old,
model right there.
big old puffy DVSs.
Yeah. So I remember one time in the early 2000s, I had these shoes, you know, that looked a lot like that, but they were also like hiking boots, but they were like some off-brand shoe that I must have gotten at like the mall or something. But there was something about them that like spoke to me, and they were pretty hip hop, I guess, you know. And I remember going on a trip to Japan, and I like walk into the hotel wearing them, and Mark was wearing the same exact one.
No way.
And I think he had nothing else to do but just to be like, respect, you know. Like, I'm sure he was like, fuck, the nerd is wearing my shoes, you know. And he's like the freshest of fresh.
Yeah,
you
he's
know?
the style master.
Yeah,
right
yeah,
there.
yeah. But I think like after that, I think he was like, this guy's okay. Either you can go one way or the other.
Yeah,
Either you
yeah.
can be like, he's okay. We're gonna do this.
That's
But yeah,
awesome.
yeah, we could get into pretty good flows. That was really fun.
Who won the battles mainly? Who was the main king of the
Lucas is
castle?
pretty good with words. That was probably
Yeah,
a draw
wordsmith,
right there.
yeah.
Yeah, you're a
I don't know.
wordsmith.
It's more of like a process, you know.
Marco's from the streets. You're a wordsmith. So, I mean,
It
wow,
was
it could
pre-
go either way. I
Yeah,
bet.
yeah. Kind of like that was like Far Side, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to pivot and do another topic here while we're rolling, because I know you ended up moving to Whistler, which you know you can get into, which is a very out of character move for a professional snowboarder from the United States. But what I'm concerned about in this time frame is like nowadays, like people are very, very like avalanche conscious. Like there's tons and tons of avalanche safety. And I watch you guys like riding all these lines and stuff and doing, you know, you're one of the first people to be like riding a line and then tricking off of a feature, kind of the early days of like the Blauvelt, Mueller. I mean, it's been, you know, Turrier, a lot of people have done it, but you were kind of one of the pioneers of like, I don't want to sit there and shovel a wedge for 6 hours. Let's fucking pat this fucker down and send her to the bottom type of thing. But that's getting into the weeds. But I was curious, like, did you guys do any like Avi training and stuff back then?
We actually did do Avi training, right?
Okay.
So Canadians are ahead of the curve on all like good decisions, right? And we and part of so like Treetop, so like the Treetop crew was kind of like the first guys that were like really like pioneering, like getting on a snowmobile and going like way out there. And they were all, you know, a lot of them were people that had like grown up in like Revelstoke and in like interior British Columbia and like pretty rural places. So they were like really like big mountain savvy. It certainly was not they weren't taking like risk mitigation, you know, to the levels of today, the way it should be at the minimum. But I remember a big part of kind of being like accepted like into that crew was like knowing that they could count on me, you know. And so we would dig pits, you know. So that was like, and they also too. That was also like they had been around like heli ski operations, right? So there was also, you know, heli ski operations happening like up in British Columbia, and it was like heli ski guides, which were some of the first people to me. You know, this is just my introduction into backcountry, is that when we'd go on like to a cat trip or like a heli trip, they're taking Avi precautions really seriously. Fair enough. You know, there's like paying guests there. You know, it's not like as Wild Westy as like a crew of Canadian snowmobilers. But those guys had all spent some time around there and had picked up some stuff. That said, you know, Yeah, it's pretty risky actually.
Yeah, I just was curious watching, and then furthermore, I know that like why move to Whistler?
I got a take on why he would go to Whistler.
Okay,
All my answers for him. I don't know if it's the reason. Where else is a guy going to be able to go as big as he wants and not have to worry about it?
Fucking great.
Those landings just go forever. There's no trees.
They're steep. They're not flat.
It's kind of the perfect place for Lucas Huffman to just be Lucas Huffman.
Dude, and where else can a 19-year-old guy buy beer legally?
There you go.
Yeah, Whistler's kind of a wonderful place.
Yeah. But I went to Whistler for all my answers are going to come back to like people.
Whatever.
So I guess that's, like.
That's life
That's
right
a
there.
That's a great, thing to highlight.
Yeah. So like we had done the year in Jackson Hole, scared bejesus out of ourselves, had spent that spring of 97 in Utah in Salt Lake, staying at Whitey's, and then also staying with you guys at like the Porn Palace. And then the next year, and then my brother broke his back, so he was out for, the season. So then it was just me, and my friend Toby Park, there's a couple of us that hadn't gone to college. That was like and consider that was like a unique thing for like my crew was like not going to college. And had already during that like first year, I had somehow gone to Tahoe. So I kind of like knew the options, and I also kind of got it that like at that time having a career based out of like Jackson Hole, you just didn't see it happening a lot, and so it didn't seem like a good place to go for me, and I was like more intense on the career stuff actually, I guess, than the average Jackson Hole person, and that's a whole nother thing, but like that like sense of wanting to do this like professionally, was still kind of like made you a little more intense than like a lot of other snowboarders.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that like
that makes sense.
Yeah, like people were just snowboarding, and it was like a fun thing to do. And like being a professional snowboarder, we can get into this. You guys get into it on every single bomb hole. It turns out it's not that fun.
Yeah,
takes the fun side out of it.
It sucks the fun right out of it when you start getting there. But
it becomes a job. You got to think differently if you want to be successful.
To Tahoe and to Salt Lake City were like the two places you could be an American pro snowboarder, or Mammoth. I had been to Mammoth too, and I was like, this is not for me. Mm-hmm. And then I had never been to Whistler, but I'd seen the pictures in the magazines, and I just like, I don't even know why I made this decision, but I was like, well, I got to move to Whistler, And there was something, maybe because I'm from Vermont and I'm like familiar with Canada and Canadians, and I was like, that seems like a cool place. And it was the Treetop videos. Actually, the Treetop videos, like at the beginning, they would have like these, like they have these like super wide shots, like the first wide shots of snowmobilers going up untouched powder ridges. Those were in the Treetop movies, And I remember just seeing that, and that was when it looked like the moon, and like people that were familiar with seeing stuff from Canada, like Canadians who were familiar with seeing stuff from Canada, but there still wasn't much like Canadian clips like going into like MacDog or Whitey didn't film up there. So any of like the snowboard films that we were watching, there'd be like a random, like fall line little section, where maybe they're like, we're going to, like Alberta to and it's just like a kind of small thing, but then the real shit goes on at like a quarter pipe in Tahoe. That I had seen that, and there was like, sounds so cheesy, but it was calling to me.
Yeah,
the mountains were calling.
Yeah,
and this is so cool how this happened. So this is also like before the internet, before anything. My older brother Jake Huffman, who just had originally gotten me into snowboarding. He, like a while ago, had dated this woman named Robin, who is now married to a guy named Greg Schmidt. And Greg Schmidt was like in Portland, Oregon, and he had like a few clips in like old MacDog movie. He was a cinematographer. He's now like a DP of feature films. I had like gotten a hold of him, and he was like, I know a guy named Jeff Corbett who lives in Whistler. Give him a call. So I give this guy named Jeff Corbett a call, who I've never heard of. And this is, I'm like 19 in Vermont in the summertime. And I'm like, why don't I move to Whistler in the next couple of months? And he's like, as soon as I pick up the phone. I think Greg had like told him, he's like, "Oh, hey, Lucas, yeah." And I did have like that like Kingpin Chronicles part had come out. So there was like a few clips and, so somehow that made me seem credible to him. And like one of the first things he said was, "Yeah, you can come and stay on my couch." This is like in Whistler, like a dude I've never met before, And so me and my buddy Toby, we pack up a Subaru, play Metallica, like driving across the country as fast as like a 19-year-old Vermonter can, and then go and stay at Jeff Corbett's house. And lo and behold, all of my instincts about Whistler were true. Like you can do industry stuff there, and you could have a career. At that time, it really was like a Canadian. It's crazy to think about it, but at that time, it was like Canadian writers shooting with Canadian photographers for these little Canadian sections, and people weren't like traveling all back and forth, and there wasn't like just a global snowboard industry. But that suited me. I was like, this is where I want to be. Like something like I said, just like the riding, the potential for the riding was certainly speaking to me, and like the just vibes I got from the snowboarders were speaking to me in a way that the Salt Lake or Tahoe, Tahoe is kind of like in the order. It would be like, I was like, Whistler's the place, if not Tahoe, but and then there was like Utah and then Mammoth, just as far as like the energy I got from the community there. And then Whistler shaped my entire snowboard career, and hanging out with Canadians has like certainly shaped my approach to snowboarding, and then to life in general.
Solid answer. That makes a lot of sense. And I keep touching on this, the fact that you rode all this kind of natural terrain, and the fact of the matter that what people were generally going out where they're building kind of cheese wedges. I guess they weren't really cheese wedges this time. It was more like a pile of snow. Like,
they weren't
if you watch the old videos but you did kind of, but while people were doing that, it seemed like you were riding lines and doing, cab 540s off of natural features and things like that. And I guess, I'm just curious as to like, there weren't a lot of people doing that, at least from what I saw at that time. What was the motivation, or where did you get the inspiration to do that type of stuff?
Yeah, well, that I have a really distinct memory actually of driving in a car on like a snowboard trip with Derek Catella, and it was like one of my like first couple years in Whistler where I also had to like kind of like break in. I just like felt insecure for a couple years, and like I remember being with like Devin Walsh on that trip, and that's intimidating as fuck, right? Mm-hmm. But it's funny, like I actually remember this. This is another moment that probably will never happen again in my life, where I'm going to have like such a clear view of something that is kind of like a big deal to me. But so at that time, there was a lot of kickers, so like I would come down to Utah, and we'd, and in the Whitey movies, there was like JP and Mikey and Jeremy and Timmy, and we built kickers, right? And it still was a build, maybe like an hour, have lunch and then hit the kicker. And like you're doing tricks and it's a kicker. And then I'd go back to Canada and I'd be riding with guys like Sheen and Jonathan Moore and these guys that like grew up in the mountains, and just their like base approach to the mountains was like free ride, and somehow, and the kicker dudes, like just didn't have like the interest in doing, like riding top to bottom, doing like a couple turns because it wasn't cool. And I don't know, maybe it was intimidating too, probably at the bottom of it. It was like, well, that's pretty fucking scary. And then the dudes that were doing like top to bottom, just kind of like free riding, thought it was like too intense to hit kickers. It was like too serious. And they're like, why would you want to like spend an hour of your day just standing there, and fair enough. But somehow in my mind, like I was like, this needs to happen, like in a way that was like, if I'm speaking honestly, like it was really like a kind of powerful feeling.
You had an orbit of light come down.
That's dope.
And I dreamt I had a Bula headband on. and I had a sanctimonious moment.
Good use of words right there.
Circle background. That's good.
Like I just like truly, I was like, this is gonna be like intense, and it's like something that like I can like contribute to snowboarding. Like I truly was like, there's like an area here where like this can happen, you know. And Devin, I mean, Devin was out there like sending it, you know, and then there was some other like Canadians, you know, that were still like sending it. But I remember just being like, you know, to be able to do like a cab 9 in the powder, and at that time, you'd be like, that's a pretty progressive trick for like the backcountry, you know.
Absolutely.
And just being like, that hasn't happened, you know, let's make that happen. And then anyways, you just kind of like start seeing, you know, like it takes a little while to like figure that out. And you're also kind of like on your own program there for like a little bit, because the free ride dudes don't want to like deal with that. And, you know, when you go filming, you're with like a crew and there's like, you know, 3 or 4 riders and everyone's got like an agenda and there's a filmer. And then that's like a kind of funny part about snowboarding that people like my wife doesn't know about, that there's all of this like, and it's not organized.
No.
You know, like if I'm on a film, like a filmmaking shoot, like a film shoot, I would be, now when I think back, I'd be like, what would make snowboarding more productive? Have a shot list, you know, and have a day and be like, we're going to do Lucas's thing over here, and then we're going to move over and do this and that. But
instead of everyone going out and kind of fighting over what you're going to do.
Yeah. Or what happens. Yeah. Or like, you know, like,
or just one dude leading and like, we're going here.
Yeah. The alpha dog who is, you know, and like in my crew, like Sheen was the alpha dog. He should be. He like knew everything, you know. But be like, well, you know, why would you want to hit that thing? You know, when we can go and we can do this like 7,000 foot face over here, you know. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, you know, like the cab 9 is gonna like look pretty good on the video.
Yeah.
But I mean, to Sheen's credit, he taught me everything. Let me just say that. So. And then people like started kind of like coming around too.
And you can't just show up in Whistler in the backcountry without a gatekeeper of sorts to show you the ropes, show you where to go, show you what's safe. It's not like, oh, hey, like I'm an American tourist, I'm gonna go up and like, no, it doesn't work that way.
And you can't show up and call the shots being an American tourist too. You got to kind of go with the flow.
Fuck no, yeah. It's not like safe, you know, at the bottom of the list of things, at the top of the list of things.
Safety first.
Yeah, while you do it, and it's like, you know, snowboarding and like surfing, and you know, there's like a unspoken like vetting, you know, that happens, and that's like, you know, when you think it's something pretty cool. It doesn't happen, you know, like in a lot of places, but there's like, you got to kind of like earn your place, and that just means like going with the flow for a little while.
Yeah, it's a combination of intangible things. You're either like in or you're fucking out, and you're in if you do good tricks and you're cool, and you can be out if you do good tricks and you're not cool, or you can be in if you're really fucking cool and you don't do that good tricks. Yeah. But it's not really, there's this kind of weird
pecking order to it all.
Yeah, so crazy. You know, like on a soccer team, like everyone's there, and there's a coach who's like deciding who gets playing time, and it's like based on like who's really good and who's got like the energy and like a kind of like game plan. But like, you know, snowboarding's like a coachless group of goons just ready to go.
Love that.
Well said. All right, let's talk about the Volcom bomb hole of the week, buds. What are we getting into here?
We are going to be talking about Volcom's ZipTech interface. First of all, who uses ZipTech?
Well, anybody that wears Volcom, but if I'm thinking about it, the first people that come to mind, you know, you got Pat Moore. He's kind of a hog out there. You got Haley Langland. You got Torgeir Bergam. You got Mike Rav. Just kind of a stacked roster all around.
And what ZipTech is it's a patented jacket-to-pant interface that's going to keep winter out and the elements out, keeping you dry on the slopes longer.
True. You know who probably rocks this a lot is Reed Smith. He is constantly eating shit. Like he's borderline almost falling more than he's actually on his board. So that could be huge.
The truth is everybody falls, right?
Yeah.
I don't care if you're Reed Smith or it's your first day out. You're going to be rolling around in the snow if you're going to be having a good time out there. This is going to keep you dry. Your jacket connects to your pants. Volcom's the only brand that has it. So if you're smart, you're going to get this technology on your body.
Okay. Well, they're also doing a cool little giveaway. Do you know about the details of this giveaway, Buds?
Yes, we are going to want to see your favorite bales. It could be riding powder. It could be riding rails. It could just be making turns your first day, whatever. We want to see it.
So basically, if you're snowboarding and filming it with your phone or whatever, upload it onto Instagram and hashtag Volcom Bombproof. Tag the guys over at Volcom. Tag the bomb hole. And you might get some gear, right, Buds?
Yeah, one of their team riders is going to pick their favorite bale each week, and we're going to send a package with some Volcom stuff and some bomb hole merch. Let's get those bales up. Let's see what we got. We will pick a winner.
All right, I think this is a perfect time for a little pivot, word we like to beat the living shit out of on this show, into some snowboard nerd talk. And, you know, that one particular clip that I was the most excited to talk about in regards to this episode is the Back 7. That's your last clip in Happy Hour. It's got that kind of country acoustic song about coming down the mountain, or I don't even know who sings it, but it's a great song. And then, but yeah, can you just talk us through that clip?
Yeah, we had seen, this Winlip, and I mean, I distinctly remember that clip, and it's actually one of like the kind of like peak moments in my snowboard experience and my physical snowboard experience, which is something that like will never happen again in my life, is to have these like ultra peak physical experiences, right? Like I'm a dad.
You're never going to jump that big again in your life, right?
Yeah. And the snow that day was like this kind of like light dusting on top of this kind of like soft snow that was like unique and pretty awesome to the Canadian snowpack. It's like not just light, fluffy Utah, kind of like impossible to manage POW, but it's also not the like super heavy, like Pacific Northwest stuff. And it was like this light dusting and the jump, to set up that jump, you go up there and you just like pat it down like 1, 2, 3, and that's it, right? And then the run in, you can just like see the whole thing. You don't always get to see your jump at the beginning of your run in. And so the run in's like just perfect. And that 7 in particular, like it was also, the one thing with patting down your jump is that like you can't be too edge heavy. So like when you hit a jump like that, you kind of like just go off like really flat based, and to do like a ultra flat based backside 7, you could you just get into like a really funky like backwards kind of like off like off axis spin, and to also like back 7 long enough so that you don't like do your 7 and then like come out and then be like, oh, I got to stop and like still soar, so there's like a lot of like air awareness, like calculations that kind of went on, which also makes it like a peak moment. I could not do that now or for whatever the last, 15 years were. But that moment in particular, like really sticks in my memory because it was entirely silent. And this was like, just like a very surreal experience, the way the snow was, like you come in and you're just like, and then you'd hit the jump and just like, and then the landing too, it's like the perfect steepness. You're just like, and then that's it, and for some reason that like experience and those like 3 seconds of my life are forever seared, not just in like my brain, but from my, head to my toes, like I just like get this like sense. And like and honestly, like the size on that, like you don't feel the size in an impact way. That's a perfect jump, right? I mean, you definitely know you're like in the air for like what your body knows is like a pretty damn long time, but just like the whole experience, I remember distinctly coming out, like riding out and just truly being like, that felt so fun.
Does that jump have a name?
I don't.
You don't remember?
I don't think so.
It sounds like such a surreal experience with the way it was all quiet like that.
Yeah, like just all those like elements to come together. And that was like at a point in my career too where I was like really landing a lot. And like I know that you guys talk about the flow state.
Yeah.
And what's, interesting is like the flow state, that could be from one step to another, if you're not tripping. And then, but for, I was like in the flow state for a couple of years, you know, where
Kid was living in the flow state.
yeah, you know, like for whatever reason, you got your like on snow stuff dialed and like your off snow dialed. And I like, I don't want to sound cocky at all, you know,
It's all right.
but this is objective. Like when filming, I didn't like fall a lot, you know, and was able to film like a bunch of parts, you know. Around then actually was, I filmed like 3 different parts one year, you know, which, if you're falling, I've had my fair share of unflow state, you know, like eras where I just like, technically you can't do that. You can't film 3 parts if you're like falling one day.
It's not possible.
It's not impossible.
No, it's not possible.
It's
not possible.
It's
Most people don't film 3 parts in a year. I
No.
mean,
Yeah.
You got to be landing a lot.
yeah. You got to be a
Right
serious,
place, right time, and also landing a lot.
serious champion.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's so many like conditions, like fucking weather. We're talking conditions, you know, that need to play into that. But I guess that's part of like kind of being in the flow state. Like somehow when you get in the flow state, like you have the universe like wrapped around your finger, you know, which is a crazy feeling, you know. And yeah, and that jump in particular, you know, like we did like I did like that, and then like a front side 7, and like I did like 3 tricks, you know, and there was like a handful of sessions where that would happen, where I'd just be like, well, I'm going to do these 3 tricks. You do the 3 tricks, knock on wood, you know, and get out of there and go on to the next one.
I always liken it on this show. I've brought it up. I call it a snowball of confidence when building a part. But you get one clip, you get another, and the snowball gets bigger, and then it's like almost like your confidence. Like it's like after you land the front 7 on the jump, you know you're feeling yourself going into the back 7. You're like you're already like your confidence is high. Whereas if you bombed out the landing before and you landed on your back 5 times, like you don't have that same confidence going into the back 7.
Yeah,
there's some factor there. Yeah. That's also, you know, flow state, same thing.
Yeah,
million ways to skin a cat type of thing, but similar stuff. But around that time also, you know, fast forward to Brainstorm, which is one of your most prolific video parts. And I think I was talking to your brother. I don't know if this is you. I don't remember where I got this bit of information, but I think it was like, you know, you kind of mentioned that you were like, or maybe he did, but you were really at peace with like getting hurt or getting really fucked up.
Yeah, that was fucked up. I had mentioned that to you.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah.
There was, this was like highlighted actually in one particular moment that I think back on now, and especially as a dad, is so scary to contemplate that I was in this headspace, which is like kind of psychotic. That there's a clip in there where I'm like riding a log over a waterfall.
Yep.
And there's it's like an Anon ad, you know. The stakes are incredibly high, right? You can only do it once. You can't like test that out. You can't like hop on, hop off, right? It's a log. I don't know if you guys put it up in the show or not, but it's like a log over like a 20-foot waterfall and with a massive open part of the water, because water doesn't freeze when there's a waterfall. You know, it's just like a big open piece of freezing cold water, and then it goes on to this like piece of ice. And I mean, and then another like anecdote, my safety measures were that like in the picture and in the shot, I like don't wear my jacket, you know, which sometimes I do get people like, oh, it's booty boss, you didn't wear your jacket. I didn't wear my jacket because my thinking was like, if I fall in, if I'm not wearing my jacket, maybe there'll be less chance that I sink to the bottom. Right? So
solid logic.
So that's like the safety measures.
Your board and your boots would have pulled you, or the current would have pulled you to the ice. I mean, geez.
Yeah. So I mean, and I remember, and that was like a kind of like the pinnacle like moment where I just kind of like remember like truly, you know, like being like, man, I've lived such a good life so far, and like in a real visceral way, and that was kind of like the trick, you know, like my head trick. You know, I had like a few head tricks that I mean, I'd be so curious to hear what other people have, you know, but that like allow you to like just forget what you're doing, that what you're doing is like extremely dangerous, or that like I put a lot of pressure on myself to like land and to film a part, you know, so you have like some sort of little like head trick to also like take the pressure off yourself, you know, and that was like one of them, which is pretty.
You're essentially saying I had lived a pretty good life. Like, are you trying to saying like you're making peace with like it's okay if I die? In other words.
Yeah. Fucked
Psycho.
up. Yeah. And there's like I like try and resolve that sometimes, you know, like when I think about it now, and there's like there's no resolution to even like being in that place, you know, and there's like it actually like makes me like sick, you know, to think about that. I mean, because now as like a dad, I certainly hope that my children, you know,
never get to that headspace.
Never get to that headspace, and you know, I listened to the Breesy episode, and I know he kind of like breezes over some like intense stuff, but I heard him, you know, like mention, you know, yeah, we were ready to die, and then like on to the next sentence, but yeah, when you like let that sink in, that is like fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
That's heavy. You're ready to put it all on the line for snowboarding.
Like that. I think that is a characteristic of sheer like drive and wanting it that bad. Like you're willing to die for it, and that's like not that. Like it's been mentioned on our show a few times, and that to me is just a testament of how bad people want it, a lot of the greats want it, that they're willing, and as much as it does probably not sit well in your stomach, like that's kind of, you see a lot of the people that say that end up going on to be some of the best to ever do it, and it's just an interesting kind of, I wouldn't say it's a common theme, but it definitely comes up.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, here's where I would like to promote that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
You know, and that, because I had like 3 different kind of head tricks, right? And so that was like at the most extreme. The other one was that, you know, I'd been obsessed with snowboarding, right? And really wanted it. But there was like a large part of me and my drive and my kind of life goals, which always thought I was going to go to college, you know? Like I never actually, it's hard to explain this, but I literally in my mind balanced putting my life on the line to get a snowboard career with the fact that like I was totally fine with not having a snowboard career. There's literally like a half of my brain which was like really interested in going to college and didn't care about snowboarding and didn't like respect a snowboard career even, you know? And so I was able to like toggle back and forth through those. And so like the kind of medium, I guess like the trick for the kind of medium sized jump where you might be like, well, I could really blow both my knees out, you know, or do some repairable damage, you know, would be like, this is going to be the career ender, you know, and thank God this way I can go to college next year, you know. But if it had ever come to that, I know now, like I would have been so disappointed, you know. And when I ended up getting out of snowboarding, I was pretty disappointed. And then there was like the real kind of like low level like trick, you know, in my head is that I had like a big community of people that didn't know anything about snowboarding, you know, and like my friends who, like all my best friends, they don't snowboard. They, you know, this is like an interesting part of my life, you know, and I would just think about, I remember this was a one that I would go to all the time, a little more healthy, you know, than like being ready to die. But I always think of them and be like, they don't care whether I land this, you know, like I'm going to still go back to Vermont this summer and we're going to like, this moment is going to mean nothing, you know? And it would like, you know, you just like release the adrenaline out of your body and it would like true and authentically, you know, like just kind of be like, well, fuck it, you know? And those would like, they would work a lot, you know, like those like little head tricks. You know, I know you guys do talk a lot about, you know, like focus and the drive to, you know, be like one of the best in the world, you know, and there's a lot of like references also to like athletes, you know, in other sports. And I mean, I'm pretty sure, you know, that like world-class soccer players or whatever, they also too are thinking about their sport all the time. They're ready to do whatever it takes. They're making all these like compromises. And so there's like, you know, a level of like just emotional and like psychological commitment that's happening. And then there's like the steps it takes to get there, right? And I know I used to fully believe this, and I hear you guys talk about it on the show too. It's really just like putting one foot in front of the other and doing the work, right? Doing the work and just going all in and taking the steps and never giving up and doing this and doing that and just like putting your head down, right? And I certainly like did that, and that really like paid off in my snowboard career. And it was super unhelpful way to approach like going to college, and now like the creative processes that I'm involved with. And that's something that really like bombholed me, you know, when I got to New York City, is I got to New York, and we can like go back and kind of fill in the pieces, but got to New York, and I was like, I'm going to an Ivy League school, I'm going to a world-class school, I'm a world-class snowboarder, I'm just gonna like do the work. And so doing the work at Columbia University is like sitting in the fucking library and reading a lot. Like seriously, I got my first year there, I got like headaches, you know, because I think literally my brain is like synapses are firing that had not been firing before, like intellectual connections and verbal connections, like all stuff that's not like kinetic. And I just blew out, you know, like 2 semesters in, I was like in a really dark place. And because I had just been like, well, I'm just going to go and I'm just going to like, I'm focused on getting all A's, you know. My new back 7 is just getting a 4.0, right? And I'm just going to do whatever it takes to get there. I got this clear goal, and I'm like a super intense, successful guy who just does what it takes to get there. And I was so unhappy, and just, I did get fairly good grades, but I was like miserable, you know, like spending all this time in the library, writing papers. And it wasn't until I kind of was like, it was until I bottomed out, you know. I was like pretty depressed. It sucked, you know, like it felt really bad. You know, I did get a 4.0 there, but it felt really bad, you know.
You got a 4.0 there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Everyone's at 4.0, but
oh yeah.
So I want to elaborate. Well, so you hit rock bottom here, and you're like, you burned yourself out, and due to your kind of same fucking I'm gonna crush school like I do snowboarding approach. And so you know, what would you have done differently, or how would you change your approach, or what was the problem, I guess is what I'm getting.
Yeah. So the problem was not being like comfortable with failure, you know, and also not being comfortable with just like being in between places, you know. So not being comfortable with a 3.0, that would have helped, right?
Yep.
If I had gotten a 3.0, I could have done all the other things in my life, had time for all the other things in my life, like seeing my friends and seeing my family, going surfing. So like I didn't have a huge one was that I wasn't even physical. I went from being a professional athlete to sitting in a chair in a library 8 hours a day. And I didn't pay attention to that. So actually I started running. That was like a big one. And then started surfing. And running and surfing, you know, if you look at like the blueprint for how to get a 4.0, that's not like on there. Just understanding that like you don't need to put your head down and just grind. And the scary thing was that like it's okay not to be a fucking hero too. So that was like, you know, like a big one is I thought, you know, my identity was like being the most successful dude in the room, right? Or being the best at what you're doing. And if you're not the best at what you're doing, making the best podcast, you know, whatever it may be, that there's no reason to do it. Somehow, this was actually through therapy.
No, love that.
Wow.
You know, it's not like somehow, I'm trying to think if I got like a piece of good advice, because you guys were like, what's the best piece of advice you thought? I was like, well, it came through like dozens and dozens of therapy sessions, you know, because like you don't change, you know, from like one piece of advice.
You don't from like one motivational quote on Instagram? It doesn't change everything?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't work that way. It comes from like a dozen mildly motivating quotes. Right?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. And what was, you know, like really interesting too is my other, you know, like post snowboard goal was to like just make films, right? To make feature films that like win awards. I had a really specific goal, and I still do, which is I'm still trying to get over, right? Is to make like these like films that win awards at international film fests, right? It's a specific thing, and it happens all the time. And like to do that, I was like, well, I just need to make tons of films and this and that, you know? And this is where I got even more fucked up, is that the creative process is not a sports process, right? And that the creative process is super subjective, and truly the best creative process, which is one that feels good to you because it's, for one, sustainable, right? And that's another thing that, like a whole other can of worms, you know, is that like, I mean, I snowboarded like every year was my last, and also knowing that like at the most there's like a 10-year run, and then you got to like start over again, right? And so it kind of puts like, so it does allow that kind of like head down, just like wing it, send it, grind, do all the other like adjectives, you know, that like are associated with like success. And that in filmmaking, what's pretty cool, I've been doing it for 10 years and I'm still like chipping away, you know? So like I mean, I did start snowboarding when I was 9, but like I truly like within 12 years just went to the top. And like with filmmaking, like there's really peaking doesn't even like count, you know, like there isn't like peaking, you know, cause it's like it's a creative art, and it's a creative, like a commercial art. And that the actual process is like being open and like accepting failure, you know, like allows you to do, and it's really hard to explain, you know, but like allows you to make like creative decisions that you wouldn't have thought of, you know, and you come at like every day. So say like in a tangible example is like you show up at set, we're doing like the Bomb Hole show, but it's like scripted, you know, and I'm like talking with you guys are my actors. There's like a camera guy over here. There's a sound guy, you know, and like coming in and just being like, let's fucking do this thing, you know, like let's just grind through this day. Let's, you know, you, Chris, just fucking say your lines, do it again and again and again and again and again and again. Like that's not gonna like get, and the results like also not like the right word, you know, but like it's the films that I was making when I was in that mindset sucked and no one saw them. So I can say that they were actually like, if you want to talk about like terms of like success and failure, they were failures. They also felt bad to make, you know, like I was kind of just like, well, I got to make a movie. I got to make 5 movies this year, you know? And like, I would go out and I'd do it, and it kind of like felt like a grind. And I'd be like, well, that's kind of, you know, you're supposed to feel scared. I also too would bring that in. I'd be like, oh, you know, I feel kind of like nervous today. And like, I don't like to feel, no one likes to feel nervous, right? If you do, fine. But, you know, like I don't like to feel nervous. And I also too kind of brought in the same, you know, to bring it all around, like that same thing. I'd be like, oh, well, you know, this is like, we got a lot of camera equipment here today. I feel kind of nervous. That must be, it's a good thing. It's actually not, you know, for me personally, like for me in my process, like that I want to feel comfortable in life, and I want to feel comfortable every day, and I want to feel comfortable like doing my craft, you know, which I do have a lot of passion for. And I honestly, I don't know how that like came about, that I kind of like realized that like it was made me like doing through like a couple film projects I did where I was like, you know, I like literally actually don't care what happens here, like whether we win any awards or not, or get into any film festivals. Like I'm just doing this for me and the few people that I'm doing this with. Probably it's like, see how you guys started the podcast. Probably it felt really good. You're in your garage. Next thing you know, you got 50,000 listeners, you know, but that like, I don't know, a couple projects that like felt right in doing them. And then the outcome as well, you know, I was like, oh yeah, this is like the film you guys saw, you know, like that just like, we had extremely low expectations for like what it can do, you know, as far as like how a film performs. Because at the end of the fucked up thing is at the end of the day, a film is actually like a product, and it goes to a market and it performs in a market. So there's that, which is kind of weird. Start doing projects like that where I was like, oh, this is like feels nice. And then lo and behold, like they're good. They're like good. And then also kind of like understanding as a filmmaker that like, like what do you want as a filmmaker? And it's like really just to like speak to an audience that like gives a shit about the movies, like going to like a fancy international, to going to Cannes, which is like, that the fancy international film festival, and you go there and everyone knows that, and all your friends' parents might also know that,
Basically going to Cannes is probably like the top of the food chain for what you want to do.
Well, for what I thought I want, for what certain people think you want to do, it's like, that's like the Ivy League thing. And like, there's like expectations around everything, and the expectation around snowboarding is that like now it's like, you should go to the Olympics, right? That's something you can talk with like your friends' parents about. They know the Olympics. And then for going to college, well, I went to Columbia. Oh yeah, my friends' parents know that, And then for filmmaking, it's like, yeah, I went to Cannes. I won an Oscar. Oh yeah, it's like just stuff that's like the mainstream symbols of success. And that when I started making movies that like didn't have that in mind, they were a lot better, and they were a lot more fun to make. And it was the opposite of saying, I want to be the best in the world, and I'm going to put my work boots on, and I'm just going to stomp through this stuff, And that was something it took me, like until recently, so we're going to chalk that up to like 15 years after snowboarding to kind of finally understand that like those lessons from snowboarding don't always work, and the stuff that is talked about on this podcast doesn't always work.
That's a great point. I think there's a lot. I mean, that's the shit that, personally, like I love sports docs. I love that type of stuff. And it's really good to hear the exact opposite of that. And to add to your point too, there's something to be said, like in societally, really what's kind of beaten into you, especially, if you want to get on a deeper level, but as boys or whatever, like, if you do well in sports, that's equated with love. Or if your success and happiness are like how you measure your happiness is measured by your level of success. That's kind of what's, without being said directly, is kind of what you see. Oh, he's got a nice car. He's successful. He must be crushing it at life, right? They don't say what I'm hearing is like balance. Like balance is actually the highest level of success, right? And that's not something but inversely, I will say though too, I think those years while you're young and while you can do it and pushing it to its limits, I think it's good to do that too. You know, while you're but taking that approach of like, I love the motivation when you start doing it because you love it, and you start doing it because you truly like don't care about the expectation of the accolade, but you're doing it because you enjoy the process, and then all of a sudden everything starts working out. That's an incredible footnote.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that the snowboard experience gave me that is invaluable. But like you said, I mean, to have those moments and to say, like having like a surreally silent, massive backside 7 just thing I can picture, that was because of, having the goal of trying to do the biggest backside 7 in the world, and do a bunch of big tricks, and then putting in the steps, and the sweat to do that. So I totally hear what you're saying. And then, like the really cool stuff about the snowboarding is that, cause I don't want to like come across as sounding like, snowboarding like ill prepared me for the real world. I just wanted to make sure that like, I offered that to the ongoing bomb hole,
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Would you have gotten that 4.0 if you didn't grind like you did?
Let me ask you this. Did getting the 4.0 make me happy?
Let me ask this back, because people go to college and they spend a lot of money, and the goal is to, I guess, come out of there, be successful in your career. But a lot of parents put the pressure on it, like, yeah, you need to get that 4.0. And then that does reflect in some jobs you can get, not the ones we're after. but in life, you know.
Good sidebar. I love that.
I mean, that's the whole grind of college. It's almost like you're supposed to take it like a professional athlete and come out of there, and then you're going to get the best job as a financial investor on Wall Street. And maybe for creativity, though, you can't force creativity. You can't get in there and grind it out. It has to come to you, and you have to have that process. And I guess that's what you learned in there.
Yeah. I mean, the like ironic twist is that going to Columbia like matured my brain in a way that like no other place would be, and being in the environment, you know, so like being in the Columbia environment, I'm going to just say the dumbest thing. It's like being on, you know, the Mac Dog film crew. The everything there, like you go to at the orientation day, they're like, welcome to the Ivy League. You know, like you're in the best university in the world. You guys have all been selected because you're the smartest people in the world. And it's going to be a lot of hard work, but you guys are all, you know, like the most successful people in the world, right? And I'm like, yeah, it sounds like Kearns, you know, like before we go out to film, you know, like I was like, this is my people. I'm with the elite that, you know, like I'm with the elite. Again, this is my place. Practically speaking, going to Columbia didn't actually do anything for my film career. You know, I do know, like, I have like a lot of friends, and I always do think that like at some point I'm going to be fundraising a film and they're going to be like, you're a Columbia alumni, you know, like it's like, I have a,
because some other guy went to Columbia and it's like, oh, let's fund this.
It's I have a faith-based, you know, like, just kind of like belief that somehow it's going to really pay off in like what you're talking about, which is like practical dividends. And it did, and in the same way as you know, snowboarding gave me these like life experiences that I would go on and use unto this day, you know, and that being a pretty gnarly student at a gnarly school like that, did give me like it shaped my rigor. It was like to be a Columbia student. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, there's a lot of like similarities. Like they expect you to be sacrificing everything and working hard.
They want you to melt your brain in the library for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
That's like what they expect of you, I'd imagine, in Ivy League.
Dude.
How does a pro snowboarder that took 15 years off from school get in an Ivy League school?
You want to know the secrets?
I do. Because it doesn't seem like
thinking about applying,
that possible.
Yeah, dude, you guys want to work on your college essays after this?
Yeah, let's do some essays. Yeah.
We're gonna have to work on.
Is that what it is? It's all about the essay, but don't you have to have your dope SAT skills, and don't they have to be current? And
Columbia had a really unique program. They have a program called the School of General Studies. We should give them an air horn, just because you never know.
Let's do it.
It's our first Ivy League air horn right there.
Yeah. So
normally actually roast college on this. I love this.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, dude. So the General Studies, and it is a kind of like an entrance program. Like I was in class. So I was 28 and I'm in classes with like 19-year-old kids from from East Coast prep schools.
Oh,
like
good thing you look real young.
Yeah, but oh man, let's not go there. So but they have this program called GS, and it's for non-traditional students with life experience. It says that right on the website, and it's like for non-traditional students that want like a world-class education. And I'm like, this is me, you know. And so you do, and so the essay like included, you know, what have you been doing since you've been in like a normal in a traditional like academic setting? What have you been doing? And you do write an essay, kind of like talking about like the value of that and why that makes you. Why you're going to be an exceptional student and contribute to the academic community there. And so what's pretty cool is like the kids who the nickname for this program is actually Uzis and Tutus. And so there's a lot of vets. So there's a lot of veterans that are there, and then a lot of ballet dancers.
Wow.
You know, so there's other people like ballet dancers, you know, on paper look a lot like snowboarders. You know, they're like super successful, but it didn't have anything to do with like a traditional education. And so I got, was part of like the acceptance thing. And then, but they do just like funnel you into class and you're like sitting there with very young kids.
Wow, that's crazy.
Wow, I really loved all those topics you just hit on. Super inspirational. Love how it's just a totally different perspective than me beating my chest every episode a lot of times about this stuff or other guests. And
Chris, I just want to interject though,
Yeah.
right? That what I didn't mention was that this is all just for me personally. Every
Yep.
person works different, and that this was just personally what works for me was to like mellow out a little bit and
Yeah.
live in the middle. And so I just want to, on the record, to say there's a lot of value for like setting your incredibly high goal and working your face off to getting there.
There's got to be a clock to how long you can go as hard as humanly possible. You know, like you're going to burn out, or you're going to get married, you're going to have a kid. It's like
and again,
life's going to change.
Everybody's different. Some people thrive on that. Some people, but going
You know
again,
what all the big dogs always tell me? Like the richest people I've ever known and the most successful people I've met in life, they always say work smarter, not harder.
There it is.
That's the advice they always throw down.
Yeah.
Like even going back to this other stuff, I think that's really cool. It's like again, the thing that really speaks to me is the balance too. Like you sounds like you found your balance. Like you're working so hard, you weren't exercising, you're whatever, and then you kind of and you're kind of you figured out the things that all work, and maybe not overworking is part of that perfect balance too. But what I really want to lean into a little bit more is that talking about the creative process, because like that's kind of a vague statement, but in order to create the movie, which Buds and I watched, which is incredible. Remind me the name again.
Night Music.
When this is out, you guys got to watch it. We were blown away, fucking glued to the goddamn screen.
We're doing like the festival circuit this fall, and then we'll do an online premiere, so it'll be readily available.
So going back to the creative process, like in writing and directing a film, there's like so many ideas and light bulbs and things that flash. Like when you're feeling creative and you get an idea, there is like an untangible kind of way to get there in some ways. And so what are the types of things that kind of you can actively do that kind of help the creative process fire a little bit?
To contradict myself.
Yes.
Right? So there's like if you listen to like like Paul Thomas Anderson's, like screenwriting interview. He did Boogie Nights.
Okay. Yep.
Magnolia, or like when you talk to like writers and creative people, the way they just say, sit down to your desk and write, even if you're not feeling inspired. Right. And that's true. So I'm so sorry to say this,
No,
but like, just sitting down and doing the thing, putting maybe expecting less from yourself, don't expect 4.0, 80-foot sevens from yourself like every day, but just showing up, right? Just showing up. That's it, right? That's it. And that I do all the time, because the creative process is so vague, dude. And it's something that I engage with and I think about a lot. That's my new snowboarding, is like engaging the creative process. And it's something what's so cool, different than snowboarding, is I can see myself doing that until I die, and die a natural death, or untragically accidented death.
Not a log ride across a river. Though.
Not frozen to death, but just dying peacefully. Just showing up, just showing up at the computer, or even, I go to set some days, and you go to set some days and you're like, this scene's so cool and so exciting, and these actors are just so inspiring, and some days you show up on set and you don't have like that euphoric feeling, and just knowing that that's okay too, that's like the trippy thing about being engaged with the creative process, which is not coincidental, I'm sure, is that there's a lot of euphoria involved, like snowboarding, like true, just, there's like chemicals going in your brain, and it feels really good, feels like drinking beer and doing drugs.
A little dopamine hit.
Yeah. And when you have like, even if it turns out to be a bad idea, this does happen, I'm like, oh, what if we put the camera here? That's, it feels like a good idea. And that doesn't always happen, and that just showing up, and that somehow I've been able to like retain an appreciation for having the opportunity to do that, so even I've got like a little office, you know, and it's not as like cool as you guys' office. It's not as cluttered, but it is more child safe.
Not as cluttered.
It is more child safe.
Yeah. But, you know, like just, I don't know, somehow I've been able to also be like, and that's a kind of, I don't know if that's good advice or not, because it's really hard to like just one day be like, oh, I'm going to appreciate the fact that I can like go to this place and do this thing. Yeah.
There's something that
Chris was doing that yesterday.
There's some. I literally tell these. I walk in this office a lot. Like, and it was more of a euphoric day, as you would describe. And I was just telling everybody that's here at the Bomb. I'm like, I fucking love coming to this place. Like and there's something that's really cool. You know, there's a lot of parallels. You know, we try to do creativity. Like our creativity is like, we're going to create smelling salts and we're going to sell them. It's like, it's dumb, but there is a creative process there. There's things like that. And going back to what you're saying earlier, like it's kind of cool, I think, for people who are in different chapters of their life, right? You might have somebody that's pursuing a snowboard career or whatever, and then you go into the next phase is a thing. And this is kind of, you know, for us, like I liken it to like coming to the Bomb Hole, like making these shows. I am as excited as I was when I was like 16 getting my first box in the mail, you know, and so for you, you know, I was talking to George Kleckner and he likened your next chapter. He said, I was talking to Lucas and he said, it's like showing up in Whistler at the trailhead with the excitement of like going snowmobiling, you know? And I think that's pretty inspiring that like you can find that thing that still fills your bucket like snowboarding, even after you kind of round the corner. And that's a really great, you know, message to just like, you know, you can take the good and leave the rest. You don't have to be full border mentality, but there is kind of, you know, some cool parallels there.
Yeah. You know, and the big parallel is that I'm my own boss. And that's like actually one of the biggest like snowboard things that I find is parallel, and that snowboarding kind of like just introduced me to. Like, I've never gotten a W-2 in my life.
That's amazing.
You know, and that a career filmmaking has like certain risks, you know, which that having a 9-to-5 job, you know, would kind of cover up, like not having to hustle, right? Still excites, you know, still like project to project, you're trying to like raise finances, and there still is like this like, you know, just always like financially, you know, like hustling to put together projects. But that was like something that snowboard taught me. I was like, oh, I can be my own boss, and know there's like a snowboarding, there's like a certain element of like business, which is nice that you guys talk about, and Brees was so good at talking about that.
Holy shit.
Because I mean, he talks about business a lot, obviously, and thinks about it a lot, but you know, there's a certain element where there's like really practical things like budgeting. You know, I made this much from photo incentive. I'm going to like, you know, put that away because through whatever your arrangements are, you know, but just like thinking about like managing your own money as opposed to knowing that like every Thursday there's like a paycheck that's going to come into your bank account, and you kind of like just know that's going to happen like 12 months out of the year. So there was like some really like just dry practical stuff that from snowboarding that I still use in filmmaking. I'm like, this is actually now more comfortable for me, you know, like going. Sometimes I freelance, I'll go into like ad agencies, and they're in an office, and there's like smoothies, and there's like a snack bar, and there's a cafeteria, and there's a lot of other people, you know, all kind of like servicing still like a kind of like corporate umbrella. It's pretty fun for me actually to do that, because I'm like, you know, these smoothies are amazing, and I'm going to get free coffee and stuff. But there's like, you know, an element of it where I'm like, after a while, I'm like, I got to just go and just do my own thing, you know? And so I've been able to set up like my business like that, you know, where I just in like an owner operator of my own production business for a while, but then also go into these agencies, and just having like the awareness that you can even do that, and the confidence, and then like some practical like knowledge tools that comes from 10 years of being a freelance snowboarder, you know?
That's incredible. Hey, let's we've been cruising, and we skipped over a
we did. I was just
great
thinking
little
about that.
segment of the show. You've been dropping so much knowledge on us that let's get into a fan favorite. Here we go. Okay, the Name That Video Part segment is presented by the Icon Pass. Now, it's going to be a great winter. You're going to want to get out there, get snowboarding. If you're going to want to snowboard, you're going to want to get an Icon Pass because they got locations all over the place, over 45 destinations, right, buds?
That's right. In 5 continents, 9 countries, and 15 states in the US of A.
Wow, that's a lot of places to go snowboarding.
It's a lot of places.
It's a lot of places you could say to own the Stoke, if you will.
If you're going to own the Stoke, you're going to have to be in one of those destinations.
That's exactly where you're going to become a shareholder, owner. You're not going to be leasing the Stoke. You'll be owning the Stoke with an Icon Pass. Now, you can find one of these bad Larrys at iconpass.com. How much are these things going for, buds?
$499 for adults, which is a great deal.
That's a great deal. Head on over to iconpass.com and pick yours up today. Going to dive back into the snowboard brain here. I've been saying it's a fan favorite. I'm actually unsure if this is a fan favorite or not. I don't know if the fans actually do like They're actually like, I hate this. Can you get it?
But either way, they're going to get it.
I get so stressed out for whomever's sitting in this chair.
Are you stressed
now
right
that you're sitting there? How are you feeling? Confidence level 0 through 10.
That little music cue, I'm nervous now. But that's supposed to be good, right?
Palms are sweaty.
I'm scared. Yeah. So at this point, I'm supposed to tell you guys what my confidence level is.
We just started asking that for unconfirmed reasons, but it just became a thing.
The number is put up on the screen.
Yeah, Paul made a little thing where the number comes on the screen.
I'm going to go for a true to my own word and just say a 5.
Solid.
You know?
All right.
That's a lot better than some people. So
here we go.
Oh, come on.
Come on, Meatball.
That's MFM.
Yes, it is.
And
Frank
Back in
Montoya.
Black.
If people don't know that one,
that's actually the second part was incorrect. It's actually MFM and Happy Hour. But
oh yeah, he's stomping around.
and
that would
I think that's Back in Black.
Yeah, Back in Black's a stomping around, but that's the one he does like a back 3 late shifty. It's an incredible part. Mark Frank Montoya.
Dude, the
Happy
bomb
Hour.
hole cooler.
So he got the cooler. It's filled with Bombhole merch, which is all available at bombhole.com. We got new hats from Cole. We got what else we got in there?
You guys want to give this to Matthew McConaughey? He's going to be so stoked.
Yeah, this is gonna be. Are you guys on the documentary? Are you guys gonna cover the Bombhole like when you guys come here for the McConaughey film?
Yeah.
We'll let you guys use the office. That'll be tight.
You can also dig through the back and pick through what you want to.
Those shirts might not be your size. I don't know if Jules swapped it off or not.
I'll swap them out. This is awesome. Thanks, guys.
Okay. And again, all that stuff's available at bombhole.com. I believe we have a thing going right now where you get some socks if you spend over $75.
That's a fact.
So check it out. All kinds of good merch. Stony Buds has some incredible merch on there. Now,
some air fresheners.
Part 2, this is for you guys. If you know the answer, you know the drill. Here we go.
Do I get to say it and you guys bleep it out?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
those are
it is.
nice. What how did you know that those were like? important to me.
randomly, I didn't actually. I knew that was your dog.
Yeah.
And I just thought it would be fun. I wasn't sure if you know the one, but
of course.
that's a great part. It's an ender in a on. We won't
white-
say the name of the video,
Yeah.
but yeah. We're going to get into pub beer. We're going to talk about a great sponsor of the show. Buds has been crushing some can. He seems to thoroughly enjoy it. All the boys seem to just crush pub beer. Huh, Buds?
Yeah, you need one, bud?
I'm gonna take a bunch of those on the road with me. Can
All
you do
right,
that?
we got you.
There
dog.
it is.
Yeah.
Celebrate
you
the
will
film
enjoy
festival.
some cheap, fun beer.
Yeah, their motto is cheap, fun beer. If you're picking up beers and you see pub beer there, might as well get them. They support the show. They kick ass. So get yourself some pub beer. With that, we're going to get into the crapshoot. Here we go.
Welcome to the Pub Beer Crapshoot.
That is Dave Chappelle saying clackety, 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 clack. And so what you do is you roll some dice, and then according to what the dice land on, you have to maybe answer a question. You could potentially win some money. There's all kinds of good stuff. And again, if it lands on Goon Gear, shout out to Lucas Magoon and his whole family. Also
That's a
Vermont
6.
local. Those are 6s.
What's that?
If it lands on Goon Gear,
What's
it's
that?
a 6.
Oh, okay. Right. Obviously. Okay.
Yeah.
So should I be spinning? What am I supposed to do?
Throw those
throw them on a
dice
table.
down.
Like, you never rolled dice before, Lucas?
You almost got sloppy dice. That was good. We got a 6 and a 2.
That is 8.
That's the money.
Okay, well, I don't know if we covered this or not, but tell us about the breakout moment that helped launch your career.
I don't have like the ultimate breakout moment, but because there's like a series of things that happens, right? But I do. What does come to mind? Like I have this one moment, you know, that like randomly is associated. There's no logic to this, but the first day that I got to film with Kearns, I guess that did change my career forever. I wouldn't call that a breakout. That was more like a breakthrough. That would be like a breakthrough moment.
Well, the breakthrough moment.
Yeah, because he was like aware of me. But I remember that, you know, I had been filming for Kingpin and had some parts out, and he was aware of what I was doing. And I remember going to like get some beers. This is snowboarding. You know how snowboarding happens.
Yeah.
And you're going out to get some beers and a burger. And Kearns was there with Devin. They're like over at the bar side corner, you know, I'm like trying not to stare at him, just like, you know, and he like came over and was chatting and then was like, would you like to come out and hit this gap with us tomorrow? Like, you know, and I was like, well, yeah, of course. And we went and hit this, what's called the Hurley Gap, which do you guys,
I know which jump you're talking about. Yeah,
yeah, it's like over like a snowmobile cat track. The drop's really steep.
Yep.
Like, so did Dano shoot a photo of that?
Everybody shot a photo.
A photo of you on that he posted recently. Flash.
Oh yeah. That's
photography.
That's
a different one.
That's a different gap. Right. This is the one you kind of like just drop out of like
super high.
Yeah, out of it. Yeah, it was like
snowmobile underneath it.
Yeah,
snowmobile. Yeah, that's the classic. Like
you always put the sled under it, huh?
Yeah, you have to, right?
Yeah.
Photo tricks, and they were like hitting a different version of that. They made a bigger version of that, and Kearns, whose like ability to get the best out of you snowboarding intelligence is the best that there ever was. And I think he somehow got it in his mind that having me there the next day would help motivate his crew. You know, it's crazy that anything could happen like this. One day you're drinking beer with your buddy, and the next day you're snowboarding with Devin Walsh, who to me was sanctimonious.
Great adjective.
Yeah. And that day we go and we session, and sure enough, the gap's fucking massive. But it was pretty, at that point, like, I felt pretty comfortable and was like trying to do like some switch backside threes on it, which was me, you know, that's like my version of like going like big or going home, just trying to make sure I leave an impression on these guys. I remember I didn't land. It was really, that gap, like in particular, is like super hard to stomp because of all of these like physics involved in the tight landing, and you're like falling out of the sky and
low elevation snow.
Yeah. And so like stomping, if I had stomped a backside three, that would have really kind of like made people remember me. But trying a backside three was enough. And that was, so we did that session, and then that summer, Kearns like invited me to film with Mac Dog. But that like, I remember being at the bar and talking with those guys and me just trying to play it so cool. But that was another, like, as like surreal in a different way as like the silent backside seven, you know. And as far as like breakthrough, I think of that as being like my snowboard career changed after that moment in that session.
You know what? I'm going to interject with a pretty surreal moment I kind of had when you were coming on the show. I talked about it with you briefly, but when I was 17, I drove cross country with Scott Stevens and Austin Granger, and the first place we went when we got to Mount Hood, it was, you know, to go to Mount Hood, was Austin Granger rode for Nitro. We went to the Nitro house, and at that time I had never seen pro snowboarders, and I walked in and like kind of, I've met a few here and there, whatever, but you were sitting on the couch, and I remember being like, holy shit, Lucas Huffman is sitting on the fucking couch right now. And then like come full circle. Now you're sitting in the goddamn bomb hole. It's fucking awesome. Just had to interject with that. I think it's pretty cool. Serendipitous, is that a right word for that? Or?
Does it work?
I don't know I don't really know what that means. I'm just trying to sound smart.
I think it works there.
Okay. But along those lines of what you're just saying.
Diabolical? Is that what you meant to say?
Diabolical.
I got my words.
Yeah. Let's dive into a great guest question from your brother.
Hey, Lucas, it's Jesse, another guest question. Do you remember the day up in Whistler where you filmed the Cab 5 that was the opening part of your Mac Dog shakedown part. I'm wondering if that was an average day filming with Mac Dog and Whistler, because to my memory, I went with you guys and you hit no less than like 8 or 9 just insane jumps. Let us know.
Thanks, Jess. What is crazy is that was a pretty average day. You know, I think that's like the crazy part, is that was like the Cab 5, and then some of the other.
Not just the Cab 5. You do a bunch of switch turns into it and then fly off the thing, which is like fucking awesome. Just had to start to interrupt.
Yeah. That was it wasn't just the whole thing was to be like, how do you like Cab 5 amongst a groovy power run, and because that year, you know, like the bar was like super high every single day, and we would just go out and we're like pushing ourselves so hard every day that you're in like, I don't even know what like the flow state of flow states is. I don't know if that exists.
Peak flow state, maybe?
Hyper flow state.
Okay.
You know, like by the time you get into like late February, March, you're also like just kind of like probably like accustomed to like adrenaline levels.
Yes.
You know, like adrenaline is like the norm for your body, and being in like super dangerous situations and all of the like physical experience that comes with that. That's like your office, you know, and that's when like a lot of crazy shit goes down. And if you're having like a pretty good year, you know, like you said, that kind of like your snowball of confidence and like just kind of landing track record is pretty plump. Yeah, I remember Jess coming in. We also had like our snowmobile scene dialed, you know, like our kind of like snowmobiling and BC is like a whole sport into itself. You know, that's just like how you get somewhere. That's like the public transit that, you know.
Yep.
But we had all our scene was all like just dialed, and everyone knew what we wanted to do. And that crew, like our Canadian, the whole crew. I mean, I know that like JP and all those dudes down here like had they're just kind of like work protocol. I mean, I don't even know what everyone's just on point, you know. There's no confusion. And same thing with us. We had like a whole season's long list of jumps, right? So we weren't like wasting energy, like kind of sitting up there being like, well, what should we hit? You know, like, you know, that one's not going to get sun until the afternoon and this and that. We were like, here's our morning jumps. Here's our afternoon jumps. Once we hit all those, we're going to go into the other gully. Oh, we didn't get there. Okay, we'll get there tomorrow. Like we were like really on a roll. And so, yeah, when Just came up, we were like just hyperflow state. And that's what's trippy. And like an objective perspective, which is like what he had, that's like not normal, you know. But what's crazy is to be inside a bubble of, you know, riders and filmers where that like felt like we were like, yeah, we're on par right now. You know, we're like not dropping the ball. And then there was some moments where you'd be like, oh, that was sick. You know, that was sick even for flow state. But that day in particular was like, we got a lot of shots. They were all worthy, you know, of being in the video. But like, it felt fairly normal.
I got a secondary question to that in regards to that, you know, particular day. And I guess that opening line where you do those turns and the switch 540 and JP Walker is essentially saying like, Lucas is all about keeping it organic and hippie. I got nothing but love for you. Do your thing, boy. Now, I was just curious, like knowing your demeanor and everything, like how did you feel about that voiceover when that part came up?
Oh yeah, that's controversial, isn't it?
We're about to find out. I don't know.
Well, no, I hear from I get a lot of people that are like, I'm really sorry that JP did that for you. You know, they're like grumpy for me. Having JP Walker do a voiceover for your part, there's like a certain like 80% of that just is like whatever he says is fine by me, because like the legend is acknowledging you.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point.
Like,
yeah.
So there's a certain element which I was just like, that's cool. And then beyond that, I didn't have, honestly, I didn't have like too many problems. I didn't have any problems with that. But I do know that like it's not like, did he nail my like authentic self? No, but him and Kearns they're also, like trying to think of ways to like elevate the stuff around the snowboarding.
Creating a narrative.
Yeah.
Well, the thing, I mean, I'm a gigantic JP Walker fan, as I mentioned on here, but to me, it did seem a bit out of character for you a little bit.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, great part of snowboarding history. Yeah, fucking awesome. All right, we're going to talk to you guys about some rope tows, specifically the Toe Pro. It's your backyard rope tow. That's a lot of tongue-twisting words. Now, Buds, you've seen one of these things work in action.
I did.
What are they all about?
We used one at Bjorn Linus's backyard park, and I tell you what, man, it was incredible. Kids were no hiking going on. They were able to get their reps up, hitting the features a million miles a minute, it seemed like. As a photographer, it was almost overwhelming.
You actually hit the features going up the hill.
Yeah, there's enough speed with those things.
Yeah, they haul ass, and we've talked about on the show, if you want to get good at snowboarding, you got to get those reps up, get those repetitions. And it's definitely just a fun experience with your friends. Hiking's great. If you don't have a rope tow is really the ideal scenario. So if you have a cool backyard setup, we're actually giving away a rope tow with the guys over at Toe Pro. So what you're going to do is take a picture of your backyard snowboard setup, upload it onto Instagram, tag #ClipHigh, and also tag @TheBombHole, @ToePro. And we will be giving away a actual rope tow to the winner of this. So, maybe your hike park can become a rope tow park. And these guys kick ass. If you go over to toepro-lifts.com, you can get a 5% discount if you use promo code BOMBHOLE. Rope tows kick ass, and get yourself one yesterday. So upon talking to Tonino and I think George and some guys that were close to you, it sounded like, every single year you would basically film a video part, and I think you mentioned it too, but you would film a video part and be like, that was my last year. And they'd almost have to like beg you to come back. And, that's how it was described, and like,
that's considerate of them.
Or not beg you, but try to talk you off the ledge or something to come back to snowboarding. And some of your last few video parts were some of the heaviest ones you ever filmed. And I guess it would be cool to kind of talk about the kind of dogger years where you were going ham town towards the end.
Yeah. So there was, the first dogger year, which was Shakedown. And, and Sean had invited me to come and film. And so I had to make a choice, like keep filming with Whitey or go with Mac Dog. And it was actually a pretty easy choice for me because Kearns was fucking focused, and he had like this charisma about him, which totally got me. And at the same time, I think Whitey was actually getting a little bit out of like the snowboard videos, and it was a place too that like with Kearns, I just felt like so at home, and there was something about it where I was like, with this guy, he was of any people that I was with, he was most like the snowboard coach that like gets the team to perform at their highest level, and he just like set up the environment for world-class snowboarders to snowboard their best. And so we did Shakedown, and then there was the Chalk Smack, which was after that, and then Follow Me Around. And like those two videos, I was really phoning it in. Barely. The lines were, open at best. But like I had a shoulder injury, which was actually off the same jump from that backside 7. I hit that the next year and dislocated my shoulder, and was able to did Shakedown but my Shakedown season actually ended early because I had to get shoulder surgery. And then the next 2 years, I'm just plagued by shoulder surgery and shoulder instability. And you're in that place that I hear every snowboarder you guys bring on has, every dude like me, older snowboarder has got the same story. They kind of peak, they have some kick-ass parts. And then when they're at their highest exposure level, they keep snowboarding and they keep the pressure on themselves to be a world-class snowboarder, even though most times their body is just not up for it. You know, like my shoulder, like really what I needed to do is take an entire year off and let my shoulder heal. But snowboarding, the snowboard career is not set up like that, which there's no better, that's just for worse.
Yeah.
There's no better or worse, that's just for worse.
How it is, yeah.
You know, and so, but I still, you know, like I had to go out there and I had expectations, and I also, at that point too, one of the tricks I always told myself as well is that whenever snowboarding stopped becoming fun, I would quit. And during those last years, it was definitely not fun, but the money was pretty good. So there was like, I was like, yeah, snowboarding for money more than just for like the fun of it. And we've also heard that on here a lot. Like that doesn't work. Those other, so the we were on still good crews, and I think my level of snowboarding was like high enough that I could still phone it in and like still have sponsors. But I was really bummed out, you know, and it's like it's like, you know, depression is not really like a feeling you can like articulate, you know. It's just like you feel tired, you feel unmotivated, nothing, you don't feel the euphoria, right? You know, like you just don't feel anything. Then I remember there was a trip. So this was like the breaking point, you know?
Yeah, I want to hear about that.
My breakdown moment.
Your breakdown.
Yeah,
what was your breakdown?
We don't
moment?
really have a breakdown moment on the show. I like this.
Dude, everyone's got, what's crazy is I listen to the show and it's so comforting to me to hear, you know, like kind of like people that have this like really unique experience that of like a pro snowboarder with like the same arc, right? And it's like just so predictable. Which maybe, I don't know, somehow if like listeners could like learn from us old crusty shredders and our like predictable demises. Like, if there could be,
It's got to end sometime.
Yeah, there's an expiration date.
Yeah. So my like breakdown moment, I recall, was on Follow Me Around, you know, and filming with Mac Dog does come with pressures, you know, that you just be the fucking best in the world. And we were in AK, and I was having like a terrible winter. This would go down as like the worst winter I've had since I figured out how to land stuff, you know? And it's just going on, you know, and you want to just like stop, you know, and just like stop. But like you did, I mean, the crazy thing is like, I mean, I signed contracts saying I was going to do this stuff, you know, and like snowboarding is unlike many other jobs where like you can't just like show up and have and phone it in, because you'll get like hurt for one. That's like the biggest one, is if you're not like super focused and you got all the juices flowing, like you're going to get hurt. And my shoulder was already hurt, and there's so much traveling that happens. And it's like, you know, when you're doing the bomb hole out of your house, like there's no separation, and you got to like really, really love it. And so when you don't, it's a big problem, and it feels bad. We went to AK on a trip to like, and I'm like, and my goal is just to salvage a part, you know, just get like 2 or 3 like decent clips. And we were like hitting this one gap. It was pretty sick. But another like physics problem landing, like some jumps are just unlandable. This was like an unlandable jump, and the snow conditions were varying. And I just remember like spending one all day falling, and it like snowed. We went back the next day and like was in the process of spending that day falling. And I remember like, and you got to go, so some jumps too, you got to go super fast. That was one problem, is that like the speed to clear it made it so that you would clear the landing. You know, like it was just a physics problem that we hadn't solved. And I'm like falling, and I remember falling so hard that both my gloves just burst off my hands, right? I'm like a pile in the snow. My gloves have been like blown off my hands because I've been shot out of a cannon, and just in my mind, just being like, this, what I'm doing to my body and my mind and my spirit is not worth it. And I got on my snowmobile, and I remember I like snowmobiled up off onto a hill, and I started bawling. And I was like literally crying, I remember putting on my like iridium goggles so that, like, no one would see me, and that was like the bomb hole of all bomb holes. The like breakdown that, I mean, I'll always remember that low. That was, I mean, it was so beautiful up there too. Like, you know, we're in Alaska, beautiful day. You can just see, you know, snow-covered peaks, like epic landscapes. Like you would take like a whole family vacation up there just to go up there. And I'm just like crying.
You shouldn't be crying at the top of this beautiful mountain doing this awesome job.
Yeah, you know, and like hiding from everyone, because like crying on a snowboard trip should be accepted, but it's, you know, but it's not.
Maybe this year it's more acceptable. I don't know.
We're getting there.
Yeah, I think snowboarding has come like a long way as far as like accepting people for who they are.
I might have seen Joe Sexton cry on a trip after 450 tries on a giant rail with a crazy trick.
Yeah.
Emotion, man, it's there.
Yeah, yeah. And like I got in my truck and drove straight from, I got my shit out of the hotel and drove straight to Portland. And that was, dude, yeah.
End of the career.
Yeah.
What did Mac Dog say?
I mean, I got like a piddly part.
It didn't matter. You were out, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it was the end of the year. That was, you know, potentially, if I was like really motivated, I would have, you know, gone snowboarding in May, like, you know, we would do sometimes.
Yeah.
But I just literally drove straight to Portland, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And that's when IR77 was born, you know? And so.
Before we touch on that, I have a quick question. Are you able to share with us, in your days as a pro snowboarder, what kind of cheddar biscuits you got at the most at the height of your career?
Yeah.
Since it's in the past, I don't know, it's up to you. It's your call.
Yeah, yeah. I love the cheddar bisque talk. I think
people
that's
really like
important.
to hear it. It was a different era.
Yeah, different era. Let's talk bisque.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't crazy. You know, like the peak years when like photo incentive, you know, so you'd get like photo incentive, you'd have like some annual salary. I'd get like an interview's killer because you get like just 12 pages of photo incentive. You can really rack it up. Yeah. And then like randomly I would do a contest here and there. And like those years, you know, like maybe there was like a 5-year span there where like the net was like, you know, like 170K, something like this.
Pretty
like,
nice, dude.
It felt like a lot because I was like 24.
Yeah.
That's what's crazy, you know.
Dude, a 5-year span at 170 is not shabby.
No, that's like well above poverty.
Yeah.
That's like for sure. So but I hear dudes come on here and talk about.
That was one dude, Dan Breezy.
500. I was blown away by that. 500. I was like, holy shit.
Guy's making more than some of the brands he works for.
One thing that we got to talk about before we get into IR77, because there's one thing, if I didn't ask you, I would be so mad at myself. But in Shakedown, you throw the fucking giant board that says Huffman off the cliff. What's the story behind
I know
that?
the story, I bet. Is that ode to Sean Farmer?
Why don't we cast Eastone as Sean Connery telling my story? So,
am I right?
Sean.
Am I right?
Action.
Am I right?
Well, wait, I'm sorry. What's
Sean
that?
Farmer?
Yeah.
I am right. We're from the same time, I guess.
Yep. Yeah. So that was, but there was a few things that
He
like.
didn't grow up in our time.
Oh yeah. So that was like a farmer reference. Okay. Where at the beginning of a part, he's standing up.
Iconic part.
Yeah. He used to have a board that had a big green letters. It said Farmer the same way it said Huffman. Mm-hmm. And this was like a Kearns idea. You know, Kearns was like, he was like, we should do this, you know, in homage to Farmer. And even back then, you know, like I know like there's a lot of like always paying homage, you know, which happens in snowboard to old pros. And you know, and we would do that to like Farmer and Palmer and this and that. So we got the board made and we went up this like super fucking massive cliff and stood at the edge of the cliff and tossed it down. But what was cool is that no one predicted, you know, how it would like flip like that. And that's like the thing that is the coolest, you know, is that like it flips and it reads, you know, like I threw 2 of them off. Because I had 2 made, we did it twice. And the other one, I was holding the other way, so it actually said my name like backwards and upside down, you know. And then we did the second one, which was, you know, legible, you know, from.
I'll put that farmer one in the show notes so people can see it.
Yeah.
And yours in the show notes. We'll put them both in the show notes.
Oh, dude, that'd be awesome. Yeah, but the way it fluttered like that, that's just like an incredibly happy accident, you know? And it like, for me personally, you know, like that's how like film works, like cinema, you know? It's got this like really like cinematic quality, you know, it's like the way a film reel works. It's just a bunch of different little things like going that make a total image.
And Kearns worked, or MacDog worked on that first movie, I think, with Farmer, or maybe he didn't, I don't know. Was it Critical Condition?
Yeah. What was that?
I think
when MacDog was...
Or MacDog started working with the Hatchets. I don't know. I don't know. Someone was schooling us on that on one episode.
All right, let's get into hot takes. It's about that time. You know, we ask it. It sounds like you've listened to a few episodes.
Never heard the show before.
It's called the Bomb Hole. We have a section called Hot Takes, and we like to ask who the Michael Jordan of snowboarding is, both male and female. Now, who do you have, Lucas?
Yeah. Well, female, Jess Kimura. And, oh, yeah. We haven't done enough.
Yeah, you've been light on the air horns lately.
It's hard. He's when he's talking, I don't want to interrupt him because he's got a good stream of consciousness.
I thought that was the cool thing is when people are talking, you just air horn all the time.
If I'm going to do a little PSA, if I didn't give you an air horn, it was there in spirit.
It was out of respect.
It was in
for
spirit.
Lucas.
It was out of respect. Yeah, that's actually Lucas's fault. You can take it up with him.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much about Jess, you know, which is like legacy material, you know, so MJ qualities, like, you know, the snowboarding, and then just her ability to change the game, because that's more important, you know, well, parallel, you know, if you're MJ, everything's different after you. And from what I've seen from her, you know, I've been able to interact with her just a little bit, but I mean, what I know about her and the landscape of women's snowboarding, she's that. And then for dudes, I mean, I'm from like a Terrier era, you know, like I'd be hard pressed to name too many pros actively working in 2021. But Terrier was also, and I've heard it a lot on here before, a game changer for, you know, just what you can do on a snowboard. And then like super pro, you know, like he was, and there was like Jamie Lynn, but Terrier was even, you know, more evolved as far as like a big ass brand getting behind him too, you know, and just super pro. And then I would see him like walk, I would go to the US Open contest, you know, and just like seeing him walk, you know, probably it was what little ballers see when they see like MJ walk. They're just like, by the grace of God.
This is a new one I've been wanting to ask. What do you think the greatest video part ever filmed is?
I mean, I also too like come with like a like a limited window of, you know, knowledge of video parts.
That's okay.
As like an anecdote, you know, did you guys ever see The Seventh Year, like Steve Blakely?
Awesome movie.
This is yeah. That like when I was like kind of like open to like greatest films, that will go down as like the most watched part that I ever had, you know, but like I can, you know, say that wasn't the greatest part ever filmed. And but that had the greatest impact on me for sure. That's like those like tweaking like stumps that kind of put like Summit County on the map.
Whole movie filmed in Breckenridge.
Yeah.
Pretty much, and maybe a little Copper.
Yeah. But the like jaw, you know, the thing is like I also during my like more like evolved Kevin Jones's parts,
yeah.
Right. So those were times where, you know, I was under the impression that they were the greatest. You know, like
great parts though. They really are. Still to this day.
Yeah, I mean, like technically, he was like, you know, light years ahead of everybody, and so and there was like a couple standard parts, you know, where you got the feeling that you were like, wow, you know, like snowboarding's different.
Great answer. Worst trend in either life or snowboarding? What do you got?
90s fashion. Which I lived through, you know, and suffered through. And I actually see this. I actually watch more skate videos now than snowboard videos. I have no idea why. It's just like it's so comforting. Like
I understand that.
Yeah, when I like feel like, so anyways, and I see this in skate videos, like massive like cutoff jeans and like super frumpy shirts and this and that, and they're kids, you know, that probably weren't alive in the 90s, and I just think to myself like, we already did that, and it was so embarrassing, you know, and it gets me. And my wife, who's like oblivious, you know, to action sports, I even vent to her. I'm like, why are they doing this again? And then you see it in fashion mags too. You know, it's like skate clothing goes to fashion mags and, you know, gets around to snowboarding. And when I see it in fashion mags too, I'm just like, that looks so bad.
Let's give that a little gunshot to 90s fashion.
So let's do a Patreon question. First of all, thank you to all the Patreon members. We're so stoked to have you as part of the Bombhole community. We could not do this without you, so thank you. This question is from the big dog photographer Cole Barish.
Wow.
Stoked he's a Patreon, too. That's pretty
that is
sick
cool.
right there. IR-77 was ahead of its time. There was nothing like it out at the time, and still, 20 years later, it holds its own. Can you talk about what the approach with that film was and the process working on it, as well as what it did for snowboarding as a community?
You know what would be cool is to call up Cole and ask him why he considered it ahead of its time to set like some context, because it was pretty fucking weird. So maybe if that's ahead of its time, and it didn't have a lot of like actual snowboarding in it, so maybe that was ahead of its time.
Cole's an artist, so from his point of view, you know, it could have just been like, wow, this is groundbreaking. I wish there was more of this in snowboarding.
I know, actually, I mean, I know exactly what Cole's talking about, because it scratched a creative itch for me that was not being scratched by the just snowboard media. And so, you know, IR-77 was a book that I like designed and self-published, and then there was a movie that went with it, and the book had a lot of photo contributions from all snowboard photographers, but the call for photos really didn't include a lot of snowboarding. It was like about capturing the lifestyle and really like the emotional experience of snowboarding and focusing on that. And, you know, and so that project was born out of my like bombhole of bombholes, my breakdown of breakdowns, you know, and so I had been in like a pretty dark place, and I just knew that whatever I was doing was not working. And at the same time, I had, you know, like been developing like just a lot more just experience with my like creative practices. That's like a kind of cheesy way to say it, but it is true.
Gets the point across. No, I got it. Yeah.
You know, and so I had been like really into like filmmaking and design and stuff that was telling stories. You know, it was less like action porn. And so I was like, so I was like, I'm going to do this one more year. Do that for the 10th time. But this time I was truly committed, you know, like I knew, and I was like, I'm going to do it once more, and I'm going to do it the way I really want to do it, you know, like internally. And, I'm going to make this book, and the book is going to, you know, tell a story of snowboarding, you know, and do like a little more of like a narrative, you know, kind of like the emotional arc of snowboarding that I experience. And it just felt like something that I could get passionate about again, you know, and something that wasn't depressing to contemplate. And I had like made the book in the summer, and then the film itself, and then, you know, talked Jake Price and Jess Gibson, big time, and talking those guys into helping me like, and to produce the film. And then I got like a ragtag group of my really close buddies. You know, there was John Cartwright and Shandy Campos and Andrew Crawford, who I had been traveling with and had known. And they were all people who were, I mean, the truth is, we weren't all world-class snowboarders at that point, you know, and we weren't at the top of our games. And it was a cool project, you know, that we could do, and we could still like participate in snowboarding, and for me personally, like not feel like I was going to have to die to have value. And we traveled all over, and we shot the film on like Super 8 and 16, and it was structured also like in the way that was kind of a little bit of like telling the story, so like the book was, and the movie, instead of just being part, it had sections, which was like anticipation, so like the morning before, like, you look at the snow forecast, right? And the blood starts going. And then there was dedication, which really is the like putting your boots on and breaking yourself. And then there was pain. And then there was a whole section just called stories, which was like room for snowboard culture and all the characters and the personalities. And then exhilaration. So it's pretty untraditional from a snowboard standpoint, but was an attempt at telling a little bit more of like a story, and which was stuff that I was like starting getting interested in, and which led me to, making what I do now, which is like story-driven films, whether documentary or scripted. And it was fucking awesome, and it was like a way for me. And well, I also somehow like convinced all my sponsors, that this is what I was going to do. And that if they wanted to sponsor me, that they need to put money into the project. And it was not like a big budget thing by any means, but it was a really cool opportunity for me, who had gotten into a place where I could actually like do that, And the funny thing is, like, I had such a blast making it, and the book itself, like turned out like a really cool, and the movie turned out really cool. And then I quit, and like we did, like a premiere party in Portland, and I got in my car again, and this time I just drove straight to New York City, and like I was pretty chafed on snowboarding still, like in like a really immature way, like the last couple of years of snowboarding had, like I felt like somehow the cosmic sport had like beat me up, and which is not true. I had beaten myself up, but it took me a couple of years. And so like when I left, our premiere and just went to New York, like I remember walking the streets of New York it was like January, and just being like, I'm so glad I'm not putting on my snowboard boots and riding a snowmobile. I remember just walking to the subway, and somehow that was like this literally, that was like a sense that I had, which is like coming from a place of resentment, which is not cool.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, I was actually not really around to like understand what IR77 was doing. And so it's such a pleasure. Like I do hear from some people, and it was a pretty core project. It was like small, and there weren't like the must-see snowboard parts. Like there's like the videos where like, well, you got to watch this to understand what's going on in snowboarding. This was not that, but I do like continually hear, some people are like, oh man, that movie like and book that like meant a lot to me. And the fact there was a book was kind of cool, because it could like sit out in like some, dingy condo somewhere, and like it wasn't just putting it on, but people would kind of like, or like read it in the bathroom. I'm sure it's in a lot of bathrooms.
I think that was a big part of, Austin Smith's career too. And
yeah.
You could say the same for maybe even Jake Price, a huge part for both of those guys' careers.
But what does IR77 stand for?
IR77 is the periodic symbol for iridium, and like iridium lenses, were like the lenses I was wearing when I was bawling my eyeballs out.
I just made that connection. It's insane.
And so that was there, and the cover, the design of the cover is like that silver foil, so there's like a reflectivity to it, which is like the iridium lenses.
Interesting name.
That's cool.
I love it. Well, we've been on a bit of a banter journey here, Lucas. Before we get out of here, we like to see if you want to throw out any thank yous. Get into that.
Oh yeah. Thank you guys thanks to Ethan and Chris, first and foremost. I've been pretty stoked on the show, you know, in the the complexity of conversations that you guys are opening up in snowboarding, you know, which is like why I got like really interested. So thanks to you guys for like having a place for topics like this in snowboarding. And then there's at the top, you know, there's my wife, Lauren, whom air horns here.
You give her the super air horn?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
It goes on for a while. We'll let you continue.
You know, without her, I would not be able to come here in today or just like be the person I am today, period. And then my two beautiful girls, Clara and Stella, who, as I said, you know, those are like my inspirations today. You know, they're everything. And then the like on my snowboard journey, there's, you know, Dan Sullivan, who gave me the shared snowboard and Original Sin. Herb George, those guys who ran Original Sin. Sessions, who got on board with me like pretty early. And then Northwave and Drake. So that's like George Kleckner was with me for a lot of stuff. And then the Nitro crew, so Tonino and Seth, who got me on there, and all the Euros, you know, who believed with me and stuck with me throughout the way. Whitey, and then Brad Kramer. You know Brad?
Not well. Oh yeah, from I do know Brad from yeah, like I met him a couple times.
Yeah, because he was on his way out probably when
yeah, I never filmed with him, but I've just like seen him through JP and things like that.
He was like the kingpin dude who I think took pity on Jesse and I for being such nerdy tools. and then the Treetop guys, so it was like a group of Canadians, you know, which is like Sheen Campos, who, as I said, was like I used to call him the wizard. He was like my wizard. And Standard, the Hatchets there, Dano Pendergrassy for just sticking with me on top of so many cliffs, and then Kearns, Sean Kearns, who truly like put me on the next level. And as I said, and Mike Rankwit, who I always think about when I think about snowboarding now, I think about taking these airplane rides with Mike, which really kind of like shaped me in snowboarding in like an intangible way. And then like the IR-77 crew, so we got Jess Gibson and Jake Price who helped do it. All the riders in the film who took a risk on hanging out with us. And then, you know, my brother Jesse, who has been there with me all the way. And then my parents. And those are like the snowboard people. And then just to top it off, there's like, you know, my whole production team now. So, you know, like I have like a small production company called Huffman Studio. And we've got like this network of collaborators that are like the new crew, you know. So thanks to all you guys.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you guys do commercial work as well and stuff like that?
Yeah. So it's like branded content and then narrative stuff.
If you guys need some stuff made, make sure to head on over to your website, which will be linked in our show notes, in our YouTube description, all that stuff. What's the website again?
It's huffmanstudio.tv.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and then you got your film coming out, which is going to be huge. Yeah.
I just found out they did the awards yesterday. We won the best short drama and the best editing, which I got the nod for.
Let's go. See,
that's heavy.
Finally, it all came back around.
Yeah, you don't want it. As soon as you don't want it,
it's like a relationship with a girl. As soon as you you know, when you're trying to date a girl and you're coming on strong, and then the minute you don't care about,
then she wants you.
Yeah, they come knocking. Yeah, I'm stoked.
That's killer. Well, dude, thanks so much for your contribution to snowboarding and fucking after all these years coming back and sitting down with us. So we really appreciate it. And, you know, we'll have another episode coming for you guys next week. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening each and every week. We will see you over and out from the bomb hole.
Peace.